The time has come once again to speak as witches and wizards do. I'm Danielle Dubois,
And I'm Michaela Gafford-Stone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 11, Toxic Positivity. Also, I alternatively thought of starting the podcast with the time come once again to rant as witches and wizards do.
Yeah, well, rant kind of implies that somehow it implies a single energy that's very kind of grr and all in one direction, whereas toxic positivity
Right.
is invasive
Mm.
and it's a problem of today's society. It didn't used to be a thing. I don't think so anyway, and certainly not as prevalent as it is now. And it ruins relationships. It ruins the workplace. It causes so many problems. The damage is incalculable. And one of the things that really annoys me about toxic positivity, and you'll hear I can go for like 3 hours on this one, fair warning, people.
Mhm. Yeah.
But here's the thing, when you inflict that sort of, oh no, everything's wonderful, oh, let's look on the bright side and all that crap,
Mhm.
when that is thrown at somebody, that person is not seen and not heard. And those are two of the most basic human needs that we have. So, riding roughshod over how somebody feels, what they're expressing, you are squashing that person and you are missing an opportunity to understand something about where they are and also to maybe offer help. Like if you have some, whether it's mundane, whether it's magical, whether it's spiritual, whatever form that comes in, you just ran over somebody without even looking at them. And that toxic positivity thing, it comes from a place of not wanting confrontation and let's just pretend everything's wonderful. There's no room here for dissent. We're all going to be happy about all the things we're doing. And I'm going to call bullshit on that every single time I see it. I do. I get right up in people's faces over it. And it causes some disruption sometimes. I am absolutely here for that disruption. This toxic positivity is a lame, just uninspired way of dealing with life in a way where you're absolutely not dealing with the damn thing. And yeah, I'm going to call it out every time I see it, every place I see it. And when that happens in a work environment, particularly when it comes from the top down, what you
Yeah.
have immediately is an untenable working environment. And the turnover is going to be huge, and people aren't going to know why. They're going to say things like, I don't know why people don't want to work anymore. It's like,
Yes.
want to work. They don't want to work with you because, everything has to be rosy all the time. And when there's a problem, you won't address it.
Yeah.
So
You
there's
know,
my opening
yeah.
discourse.
I was going to say, in case the listeners are wondering, I'm going to tell you right now, this wasn't the topic that Michaela picked. I picked the topic, but for a similar reason, when she expressed the idea that the minute you use toxic positivity, instead of you lose an opportunity to help someone, because you'll see this when you're on your own spiritual journey, right? You've probably already encountered a lot of times where people don't understand what's going on with you. So any attempt, a lot of times, most of your attempts to reach out to seek help, people are going to respond with you with toxic positivity.
Right.
They're going to try to gloss it over. They'll tell you, "Oh, don't worry, don't have to worry about those things. That's just negative. Don't worry about it. Things will be better." Like, but they don't address. the core issues of what's bothering you, because people don't have to be on a spiritual path to be able to empathize with you having difficulty. And as Michaela pointed out, toxic positivity basically takes you out of being able to give the proper empathy, the proper sympathy for someone who has a problem or needs help. So,
Yeah, or maybe the problem is actually something you've done or a situation that you've been a part of, and you could actually fix it
mm-hmm.
if you could get your ego out of the door and just look at the situation and say, oh, okay, there's no blame with this, right? We can step out of blame, leave it alone. It's not a
Right.
helpful thing, but responsibility is essential. And you have to take responsibility for what you've done that set up that situation, or in what way you contribute to it. How do you keep it going? Whatever the thing is, just acknowledge, oh, I have a responsibility here that I can accept, and I can make a change. I can do something differently. And it's not personal. It's even if somebody's trying to make it personal, it still isn't. It's from their lens. But
Mm.
how can you help them by making that situation more tenable? Maybe there's something you missed, but the very fact that toxic positivity runs over somebody's concerns, somebody has plucked up the courage to say something, and yes, squash them with, well, we're all happy here and everybody's wonderful, and aren't we grateful for yada, yada, yada. Man, if you want to annoy me, you can either tell me to calm down or come out with that kind of crap. And either way, I'm going to throw something very hard at your head because it's infuriating to be belittled that way, to be made insignificant in that way. It's like, no, my concerns are as valid as anybody's, and I would like to be heard. And when the recipient of that says, no, no, everybody's happy here, we're all wonderful, and it's all working as it should, have patience. Man alive, if I get told one more time to have patience, there is going to be trouble. Because what that means is I don't have an answer for you, but I would like you to stop asking the question. And that's the way to have people not seen and not heard and unvalidated, right?
Yes.
You may be feeling like, yeah, I'm sure of my ground, and this person's just telling you, no, no, there's no room for that here. There's room for everything here. And just because I'm not happy doesn't mean your discomfort gets to override it. And think
Yeah.
about it, it starts with little kids, right?
Yes.
When the child is upset, or, oh, here's one, you got an angry child. Oh boy, do people move fast on that one because a child cannot be angry. How dare they yell at you? How dare that child say no and stomp their foot? So that the parent or the teacher, whoever's in charge of this kid, is going to take action to squash that pretty fast,
Mm.
right? Like, no, you don't get to do that. So right away, you're being squashed. Or you might have a parent who says, oh, no, no, that's not the case at all. It's this instead. Now we're getting into toxic positivity, moves into gaslighting. Oh, boy, are we on a roll with this one?
Yes, that's the thing is once you start toxic positivity, the rest of the toxic behaviors come out. And I'm glad, I don't even know why I thought to myself, if Michaela doesn't touch on the topics of kids and toxic positivity, I'll jump into it. But I should have known better.
Always going to go
No,
there.
I have now known Michaela long enough to know that she would cover this.
I'm always going to go there because what we do to our kids takes a lifetime to undo
Mhm.
if you're lucky enough to undo it. And a lot of what happens really isn't intentional. I would say the vast majority of what happens to kids that screws them up is not intentional, but it can be fixed, it can be changed. And one of the things is if your discomfort makes you present in a way that squashes other people's feelings that you don't like, you, my friend, have work to do. And, hit me up if you want some work on that one, because with no judgment, I'm going to help you with that because you need it, but the people around you need it. That's the thing. And it's just not the way to move forward. It's a dysfunction that starts in childhood and doesn't get altered. If you're not given a different behavior, then you keep repeating the one you learned as a kid. So another example, but still talking about kids, is when you have a child who gets attention by misbehaving. They get attention by tantrums, they get loud, they throw things, and they get attention for that, even if it's negative. What happens is you're reinforcing that behavior. They're going to keep doing it because that's the way they get attention. Now, you take that kid, don't teach them any other way of getting attention, no positive way of getting attention. And what you will have as an adult is a dramatic person
Hmm.
who is always having, oh my God, my life, this never works, that never works, this is terrible, that's terrible. And if everything's quiet, they will create a drama very, very quickly because that's how that person knows how to get attention. They weren't taught anything different. And this is happening a lot more as these generations are rolling out and we're getting more into here, have some electronics and shut up. Sit down and play on your iPad and stop talking to me. This kind of shuffling kids off with electronics
Hmm.
is not teaching them how to self-soothe. It's not teaching them that their concerns are valid. You're not teaching them a new way of doing anything. So you're leaving that kid with very childlike ways of dealing with life. Enter toxic positivity and all the other garbage that comes with it.
It's interesting, with the bringing up of children, not that I'm here to promote anybody else's podcasts, but I was on YouTube looking around for information on stuff, and I came across this couple and they were talking about their own children, and they were talking about depression. And part of the discussion was that when a family has an income of after a certain amount, in the hundreds of thousands per year, depression kicks in, and one of the reasons for it is toxic positivity. In this sense of these kids now have expectations put on them, and
Right.
they don't have contact with reality outside of the toxic expectations, and therefore the toxic positivity brought to them by their parents. So this is only a glimpse. Like they touched on way more topics, but it was part of what they discussed, and they discussed how they do it with their children. But it was interesting to see the connection between toxic positivity and people's income.
That is interesting. And I think there's so many layers to it though as
Hmm.
well, because
Well, it wasn't
sometimes
purely their income, right? So some of it was partially of their income, and then it was the children they were referring to were children raised also in an urban setting, so they were subject to the monoculture that tends to develop in urban amongst the affluent in urban centers. So the kids in this case they were discussing were always subject to the you have to always be functioning at a certain level. You have to be good. You can't be exposed to any negative thoughts. You can't be exposed to these things because that would then be considered child abuse. So it's always reinforced that if you're negative, then you're doing something abusive to your children. But that puts an expectation on the children to always succeed, to always be good at something, to never allow negative things to happen.
the other thing it
Yeah.
does is it tells the kids that they can't trust you. Because if you have positivity about absolutely everything, where are you telling the truth? And if you're not telling the truth to your kids, why would they trust you? You're lying. And they're going to get that. They know that, even if it's not a conscious thing, but chances are it is a conscious thing. They are going to know on several levels that you are not to be trusted. This positivity crap is just it's a veneer hiding a whole load of stuff underneath that needs to be dealt with. Like it really needs to be looked at. Take that veneer off and see what is underneath, because that's where the growth is, and that's where your potential to be a better human being is, and to help other people around you live their lives better, especially when it comes to kids, because you have a blank canvas. What are you putting on it? And when they have expectations that they have to be the good child, they have to be the smart child, they have to be the, insert requirement here child. It says who and why would you do that to somebody who's barely, on the planet? Why are you going to start messing with their heads on that? Instead, why don't you take a look at who they are and what they're doing and what their interests are? And when they express that they have a problem with something, find out why. What is it? What's the perspective? And as that child grows up, they learn that they can have these interactions with you and that you're someone who can be trusted to be there with some real questions and ears that work so you hear them. Not listening to make a response, that's a
Right.
different thing. That's just like waiting your turn.
Yes.
And that's cool when you're playing a board game, but when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and you're having a sort of productive discourse, that requires listening to learn something. Then you can respond. But we don't do that. We don't take the time to do that. And it's key. You have to do that. That's what we're on the planet for, is we're social animals. We have to have this communication. Toxic positivity just squashes that flat. It is the most infertile ground you could have. And that is it. It is a barren field right there.
Yeah, that's very true. Because all right, are the producers telling me not to say anything? I do suspect that this episode, from the lead up to this episode today, that this is going to be a Michaela heavy episode. Well, which is fine because this is where Michaela's passion really is. And it's not that mine isn't there, because I will say that when other people come to me with problems with their children, I always tell them, I said, well, what's the child telling you? Like, cause like when I deal with kids, the first thing I do, whether I think they're wrong or not, I listen to their interpretation of a situation they're in.
Right.
And
So,
I was going to say the proof of that is that a lot of children I've dealt with have grown up and I'm their favorite adult. And one of the reasons is because you listen and you get it. And I'm like, and if you want to be a parent or anyone who deals with children, if you want that as an adult, that's what you do. Even if you think, like Michaela was saying, like, you don't wait your turn to speak, you listen. And then even if the child is wrong, you hear why they interpreted that situation that way. Because to me, like kids in abusive situations, especially, right? You don't know if you don't know them, their family well enough, but the kid tells you about it. I say well enough, like if you're a perfect stranger or whatever, that's the thing. But if you're when a child comes to you and says this happened, this happened, this happened, or they misinterpreted the situation and they think everything is really bad, you still need to hear it. You still need to know why they feel that way about that situation because you can't remedy, like we said before, there's nothing that can be remedied if you don't take time to understand what the problem actually is. And with children, that's especially important because someone had asked me, this is where I'm really trying to get at. Someone had asked me, why did you sit there and not try to, tell them, hey, don't talk like that? I'm like, because I'm undermining that child's view of reality. If that child sees that situation as bad, and it actually is, and then I try to apply positivity to it, this child is now going to doubt their ability to judge what's right or wrong for them in the world.
well,
Like,
here's the thing. When you're saying, don't talk like that, and people will say that to kids all the time,
mhm,
I'm going to say stop and think about that for a moment. What are you teaching with don't talk like that? Are you giving them an alternative? Are you giving them a solution? Are you giving them a safe place to express themselves? Or are you just saying, I can't handle this, shut up? Because I'm going to say it's the latter that's coming out. And the child got nothing from you other than a brick wall. And that is exactly what the kid doesn't need. They got to have an adult somewhere that's listening to them. So be that adult. Really be that adult every time. And also to other adults. Be the person who listens
mhm,
and who picks up on certain words. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and she was giving me a wonderful explanation
mhm,
of why she's eating how she's eating. It's one of my nutrition clients. And through this discourse, I was just listening to how she was flowing and all these wonderful excuses and what have you for things. And then I heard the word compromise pop up. And it was like,
mhm.
okay, that is out of place, but let me listen some more. And so she kept going. And then, when she'd finished, I kind of brought her back to the compromise and said, tell me about compromise. Where are you compromising and why? What are you avoiding by compromising? And it turned out that one word was key to a whole heap of gold. It was the place she needed to go, and she glossed over it that fast. But when you allow someone to just talk, words are going to pop out that they don't mean for you to hear, and you could easily miss them if you're not listening.
Hmm.
But that takes you down a whole road of useful information where you can help that person, or maybe they can just hear it for themselves, you know. But
Yeah.
our interactions with each other, in order to be worthwhile, need to be completely absent of toxic positivity. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate on this is because, and you can probably surmise this, but I grew up with
Yeah.
being parented by someone who said, "Oh, no, no, it's not like that at all. It's this," or "No, no, no, that's not a problem. It's this." And when you are run over like that consistently, it sets up a whole trigger system of not responding well to that. But it also doesn't give you coping mechanisms for stuff. So you have to go out and learn them for yourselves. And I would love for more and more people to be conscious of that and to help other people work through the stuff that they've been squashing down because they're told, don't talk like that. Don't you speak to me that way. Don't you dare answer me back. Like, well, why not? Who died and made you God? Could we have a conversation? You know, like just because the child is young, you have a great many expectations for how they're going to show up and what they're going to do, but there's no leeway for them to express themselves. Now, when that child grows up as an adult, they probably end up being the person who inflicts the toxic positivity because that's what they learned.
Yes.
And, you know, if there's no dissent, then you can buy into the veneer of everything is happy, everybody's fine. But that's not true. You've seen that meme of the dog in hell, right? With the big shiny eyes and the I'm fine, everything's fine.
Yeah.
You know, that is like the poster for toxic positivity right there.
I'm sure there's some words in a second there. It's the joys of having spirits guide an episode or anything like that. But I know this can't possibly be let the listener sit with his words, but I mean, they can always pause whenever they want to.
And I can keep going too. There's
But I was gonna,
no
yeah,
concern
because
about that.
there's a lot of quiet on the spiritual end here.
Okay, okay. So toxic positivity can also be a form of abuse. And that's not something that we saw in questions that people were asking in response to your post
Ah,
about the
yes,
topic,
yes. I guess
right?
that is something to discuss. So just so, because those people will most likely be listening to this episode when it comes out, because the
Very
response
cool.
was there were people who asked questions and they were really serious about having answers to this topic. And I know,
Absolutely.
like, maybe actually we should do it this way. So one question was asked to discuss words used that are toxically positive, have a bit of a discussion on those. I
Okay.
all of that list of phrases and stuff that are considered toxic.
It's more when it's used rather
Yes.
than the phrasing itself. The phrasing itself can be problematic, but the toxic part is when it's being used. So if you're using phrases like, oh, it's not that bad, you'll get over it. No, everything's fine. Oh, no, we're all good here. You know, everybody's so grateful for whatever. When you start generalizing and using those terms, it's like throwing a wet blanket on a fire. Everything is doused. Now,
Yes.
if you don't want the fire, then that's a great way to go. But when you're talking about somebody's inner fire and you're squashing that person, you're dousing that person, that's not okay for you to do. So when are you using that phrasing? Because that's key. So if someone in a workplace, for example, someone asks a question that might make a few people uncomfortable. They want some information. Well, this is a perfectly good question to ask. You're seeking information. But the uncomfortable people are going to say, Oh, well, we all just have to be patient and everything's fine and trust the process. And this kind of language is twaddle. Like this trust the process and da 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 is a cop out. It's like, no, I'm asking a legit question here. Can I have an answer? And the question shouldn't be brushed aside in that way, nor should the person. It's like, okay, so you might shut me up, but did you win anything? Do you need to win something? Did we move the information forward? Did we exchange anything other than you're trying to help hold more power than you think I have? This is a non-spiritual way to go, and it's the antithesis of growth. I would say it even leads to, atrophy where you can't grow, you can't thrive. We go straight back to that barren field. Even weeds aren't growing when you have that kind of situation.
Yes. I'm just looking over some of the things that people have asked in that question, or when I pose that question to people.
There was another one that did ask, is there any time when toxic positivity can be good?
Yes, that was one of the
Great
ones I was looking
question.
for.
Great question because it's such an interesting question. And I would say if you break down the topic title, toxic
Mm,
positivity, if it's toxic, I'm going to say that by definition is not going to be good, right? Now, if you separate it and say is positivity going to be good at some point, the answer is, of course, it depends. There is a place for that, but I would say not until you have allowed the other person to express their concerns fully and that you have responded to those concerns. Now, if you still have a positive
mm,
perspective that you can offer as a perspective, that's awesome. I'm all about showing people, hey, how about looking at this way? Does that
mm,
help? But checking in with them, not just like saying, okay, everything's fine, we're all wonderful, and we're all happy here, kind of thing. That is really an energy of pushing people away, pushing them down. Like, I'm just going to put you under the carpet and then sit on it. I'm not going to let you express that because I can't handle it. That is always toxic. But
yeah,
if you had this thing back and forth, and at the end of it, you can say, well, we learned a lot through this, and these things are going to change, or I recognize that, or whatever's coming up. And this is something positive that came out of the conversation. Like you have something positive. I'm going to argue there is always something positive. You just don't have to beat people over the head with it.
yes. Well, because that's one of actually that was one of the other questions too, was how do you deal with someone who's very negative without trying to be, and trying to put a positive spin on to get them out of it.
But you can't.
No,
That's
but
But
that was
that's
part
not
of it,
going
right?
to work. That's never going to work. The only thing you're going to do with that is shut them up. And then later you may be seeing a post somewhere about somebody who suicided. And then everybody says, oh, wow, I wish they'd come to me. Well, maybe they did. Or
Mm,
maybe they came to somebody else and they were shushed. They were positived. And I'm not saying if you've got someone who is perpetually negative,
mm,
you need to just keep taking it.
mm,
This is where boundaries come in,
yeah,
right? But it doesn't require toxic positivity. You could respond with, well, I hear that this has been a problem for you for a while now. What are you doing? How are you fixing it?
yes.
Like, are you working on it? Or why do you think that keeps coming up for you? Throw it back at them and
Mm,
ask them to actually look at the thing that they're bitching about. Are you doing something or are you just complaining? But none of that requires toxic positivity. It's literally being brave enough to say, okay, I've been hearing this for a while now. What have you done? Have you done anything about it? And when they start with the excuses, which is likely to happen with somebody who's negative, then you can call it out again and say, well, I'm hearing a whole lot of no action. What do you think you could do to make a difference? And if they still don't have anything, say, well, I hear that this is a really difficult space, but I have no idea what to offer you as until you're doing something for yourself. Um, I don't know what to bring. Do you have
Mhm.
some suggestions? Do you have some ideas? And you throw it back to them.
Mhm.
But it's not your responsibility to fix anybody. It's not your responsibility to change somebody's negativity, nor do you have to put up with it. So you can call it out and then distance yourself if that's what you need to do and tell them so. Don't just like ghost people because
Yeah.
man, that's annoying. But just like say, okay, I really don't feel I can do anything to help in this situation. And my energy's feeling kind of drained. So I'm gonna go over here and do this now. Or I need to get on with that. And go do it. They might not like it. See, there's a book out there called The Courage to Be Disliked,
Right.
and I feel everybody needs to read it. And the reason for that is it's Adlerian psychology, which is all about, well, it's kind of hard to explain in a short space, but basically, we do a lot of things in order to be liked. We say a lot of things in order to be liked. And it freaks us the hell out when somebody doesn't like us, which is why, when you get trolls on the internet that
Mhm.
respond negatively to something you've done, you may have had 200 amazing comments on one that comes in and says all kinds of terrible things. And guess what you focus on?
Yes. Hmm.
You're going to go straight to the one thing because somebody didn't like you. Somebody didn't like what you said. And to our primitive selves, that means we're not safe.
Yeah.
That means we got to look out for ourselves and, uh-oh, I need to fix this. So this is like toxic positivity comes in here where we've got to be okay and we have to make sure everybody's okay with us. And so any hint that there might be something off, instead of facing it, we throw positivity at it. And there's none warranted. Maybe the situation is awful. Maybe it
Yes.
actually is. And the best thing you can do is say, you know what, that sucks. Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that you're going through that. That's awful. And like, yeah, you're not perpetuating anything by saying that. You're letting that person know that you see
Yes.
them.
Yeah. That to me goes back to when, when I say dealing with kids, you listen to what they have to tell you because you want them to have a good grasp of reality. You don't tell them not to say something. Like you don't tell them they're no, you misunderstand or no, you didn't see what you saw because then they have to question their reality. Every
And they
time you
did
tell
see
them
what
they
they
didn't see
saw.
what they saw, yes, every time you tell them they didn't see what they saw, you're confusing their reality for them.
And it's also they second guess themselves, they
Hmm.
question. Then they're the person who doesn't raise their hand in class, they don't ask questions, so they miss some learning that they could have. And it goes on and on. And into adulthood, you can see red flags in relationships, for example, that you ignore because of the
Mm.
toxic positivity
Yes.
thing that you have around you. So, what here's a good one that just came to mind.
Right.
Little girls very often being
Mm.
told, oh, that boy pulled your hair because he likes you.
Mm.
Oh, so he's going to hurt me because he likes me. Cool.
Yeah.
Great message to give a little kid, right? And
Yeah.
then boys are being told, well, that means you like her. Oh, it does? Okay, yank. You're going to pull the hair some more. Like, uh, how on earth do we even come out with this utter nonsense, this drivel to our kids? Like, no, if he's pulling her hair, it means he's trying to hurt her. Why? And can we do something
Mhm.
a little differently here? Let's have a conversation, but it's never okay to go hurt somebody because you can't articulate what's going on, right? Let's find a way to express that differently.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to add this right now because this touches back to one of the questions you answered about can negativity or, can negativity be used for something positive? And the reason I'm bringing this up with that in relation is because we share a lineage. So I know kind of what they're talking about. My sister once pointed out in my family that this, I haven't seen this in a while, but sort of the way the communication was, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, but we love you. Made as a joke, but That's how my
Right.
sister characterized it. It's like there's a lot of negative talk, a lot of, the expression shit talk or whatever, but we do it because we love you.
Oh, look, in the UK,
Yeah.
it is common to say to somebody, "Oh, you're so stupid you are."
Yeah.
Or, "Oh, what'd you say that for? That was stupid." And the word stupid comes out about as often as the word
Mm.
and worse comes out. People name call each other all the time. And because it's cultural,
Hmm.
nobody thinks anything of it. But my God, if you hear how people talk to each other, it's brutal.
But yeah.
And the things they say to their kids, it's awful. Like any British parents that are listening, I make no apologies. British parents are not, by and large, very fun parents to have. They're very quick to smack you upside the head. They're very quick to call names. And this is something that just you grow up with it, therefore you inflict it on your own kids. And I see it time and time again. I grew up with a chunk of that going on, but I mean, I saw it all around me. And whenever I've gone back to the UK for a visit,
Mm.
it's the first thing you hear. It's just like, it's oppressive. People are so
Yeah.
horrible to each other. And they don't even realize they're being horrible.
Yeah, because for a while, actually, that I used to adopt that same behavior because, when you can, part of it in male culture is the more you can push someone, the more they can take, the more you can trust them.
Okay.
So you push each other to see how far you can go with them. So I used to engage in that kind of behavior too, but then I stopped. I remember one relationship I was in, the woman I was involved with did kind of that thing. I think she called me a shithead, meaning it out of. And I said, don't ever call me that again. She goes, well, it's just how we do it. I go, listen, and I might have to mark explicit for this, but I said, I grew up in a place where Momuti cocksucker is a term of endearment. So I says, I understand calling me a shithead was meant out of amusement. But I told her, I said, you know what? I have no desire to call you any names. I don't look at you and feel the desire to use any of those, insulting, but yet meant as a term of endearment. I have no desire to use insulting terms of endearment with you.
Right. And I, for one, would not be in a relationship with somebody who did that. And have not been in a great many years.
Right.
Like there's no room for name calling. I don't do it. I don't receive it. And I wouldn't spend time with anybody that did it. But there is so much of that out there, and it too is problematic. And the same people who throw those kind of name calling things around are likely using the toxic positivity as well. And this
Well,
is where you get into a whole heap of gaslighting, right? Because it's like, no, no, I didn't call you anything that was nasty. I just meant that in love. That was so much fun, and we're having a great time here, and all everything's rosy. No, you don't have a problem with me saying that. You know what I meant. Right? And how many times have you heard that? Oh, you know what I mean.
yes,
Well, no, not if I just said something that tells you I don't receive it
yes.
the way
If
you're
I'm
telling me
insulted
it's
by it,
meant.
yeah.
There is a breakdown here.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure that the person receiving it needs to receive it differently. If you're somebody who name calls, then understand not everybody's okay with that. And nobody needs to be okay with that. It's not actually terms of endearment. It's not a
Yeah.
nice thing to inflict on someone. And it is inflicting. So if you grew up with it, I'm here to tell you you can outgrow it now. You can
Yeah.
stop doing it and you can consciously make an effort to do things differently.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the reason I bring it up is because yeah, at that moment when I actually made that sentence to her, I was like, hold on a second, you're right. I've been amused by it my whole life. I've put up with it. I've done it myself. But here I am at this moment, and this person who I love is saying this to me, and I'm like, whoa, I don't do this to you. I have no desire to do this to you. So then it
Right.
becomes like, if I have no desire to do this to you, why do you have a desire to do this to me? You
And
know?
and it becomes a boundary, right?
Yeah.
Like if somebody's name calling me, I can assure you that's the last moment
Mhm.
they spend with me. I don't hang out with that person anymore. And there's no sort of room for, oh, I didn't mean it, give me another chance.
Mhm.
That kind of language is nonsense language. It doesn't mean any of what's being said. Give me another chance. It's like, no, no, that's not grown-up language.
Mm.
This is what a kid says when they've done something and they've been caught out and they want to have a do-over.
Yeah.
But as an adult, you did it, it's out there. Now, are you going to change your behavior or not? There's no
Yeah.
give me another chance conversation. It's just change it or don't.
Yeah. I find it interesting because up until that point, I personally didn't even thought I cared about it. But it was just when I heard it, it was like, whoa. I says, there's no part of me inspired to say this to you. And I grew up in that same environment as talking to someone like that. And I have no desire with you to say that to you. So it kind of threw me off that she did it to me. I'm like, whoa, I would never do this to you because I never felt that way. And as much as I loved other people that I've said things like that to, like, and I don't do it anymore. Like, even up at that point, I wasn't doing it anymore, even when I was in that relationship. But it was just interesting to see just how natural it was to not say it and to be like, I don't know if I was offended, but I was very, very much taken aback. I was just like, what are you saying to me?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a shock to the system when you're not in that energy,
Hmm.
you know. And here's the thing, getting back to the wizards and witches
Yeah.
kind of conversation,
Mhm.
we are here right now at a really important time in the world's history,
Yeah.
and people are going down or they're going up. And it's your choice to decide which way are you moving? What are you doing? Are you developing or undeveloping? And this is not intended as a you're either with us or against us
Hmm.
kind of language, because that also is nonsense. We're all on our own path. How do you want yours to look, though? And choosing the toxic positivity way of doing things, or here's crucial, repeating cycles that you grew up with simply because you grew up with them.
Yes.
We are not here to do that now. So you can choose that, which is the easier path. Of course, it's familiar and you think it's a comfort zone because comfort equals familiar. But
Right.
is it nice? Is it growth? Is it fun? Is it anything pleasant at all? No? Maybe stop doing it then. And we're here to break cycles. Now, I can say it easily. Of course, it's a more difficult thing. I've been breaking cycles my entire life,
Mm.
and I help other people do that too, because that is what we are here for. That is the shift that's happening. And old toxic sort of stories that run on never-ending kind of cycles, these are the things that we're here to change. And for somebody who's listening saying, well, this is great, where's the practical advice? I have something for you. Yay, I actually do have something. So here's a way to look at a cycle. You are going to have this conversation with, let's just say you're going to have a conversation with your parent, and it always goes badly because you say this, then he says that, and you say that, and you have this entire conversation in your head, right? And you
Hmm.
know exactly how they're going to respond because you have done this before many, many times. And it's always this way when it's Thanksgiving, or it's always this way when we get together for a wedding. Whatever the situation, everybody by now is hearing something that they have going on in their lives that's on repeat. Okay. Now you can change that. And the way you change that is you change the script. Now, we are all the stars in our own movie, and everybody else in our movie are bit players. So you, Danielle, are the star in your movie. You are the key
Yeah.
person here. What everybody else does is neither here nor there. So you have control over you and you only. Now, when you get into that interaction, don't say what you usually say. When they say a thing that you're anticipating, say something different. It's called a pattern interrupt.
Hmm.
And you are going to put them off their game because they don't know you're changing the script. And now suddenly it's like, what? What did you just say? Because you didn't follow the script. Now they have to come up with a different response because it no longer fits. You blew that thing apart.
Yeah.
Now, you may need to do that a number of times because you've spent however many years entrenching that particular sequence. But when you change the script intentionally, on how something's going to go, and you've sort of played this so many times in your head, that's exactly the place where you go mess with it. Go do something else. If your parents saying, "Oh, you're always late, and I'm so tired of you being late," and you're like, "Wow, you're right, I am late again, huh? And I really tried to be on time. I wonder what that was all about." Rather than saying, "I'm not late and you da da da," when you get into that yelling back and forth thing, that's a beautiful opportunity to change the script. Give them something that's unexpected. Whatever
Yeah.
that looks like for you, whatever the script is, but don't give them what they expect. Then they can't respond the way they've always responded. And by definition, you have to end up with a different result.
Yeah. This ties back to when we were talking about the weaponization of victimization. When I was saying that what neutralized the situation for me was to not treat the other person like they're the enemy. So yes, in your example, when someone says, "Oh, you're late," and you say, "Yeah, I am. Actually, what's up with that?" It's no longer confrontational. You've actually agreed with the person and didn't put them as your enemy anymore, but as someone who
Right.
has a valid thing to say.
And how can they continue to argue with you? Or, any pattern that you have going where you can play that script in your head, that is a place where you can change that to something else that you want. You are the star of your show. How do you want that scene to go? Change it. Because the other person, chances are they're not as aware as you have just become because they're still in the script. So
Yeah.
you have control here to change that.
Mm-hmm.
And putting your changes on repeat, keep showing up differently, keep doing the pattern interrupt. And eventually that old system, that old cycle will break down through lack of use, right? And
Yeah.
you can reinforce the path you want.
Yeah. I'll share with you an example from my own life about doing that. This was years ago. A bunch of us were playing cards, and someone had done a play, and it cost them a lot. But the person trying to be helpful to them said, if you're smart, you would have done this. And then I chimed in with,
Mm.
but since you're stupid, you didn't do it. And then the other
Right.
person, like, kind of, both of them looked at me like, what the hell are you saying? I'm like, well, essentially, you just called her stupid. You may not have intended to have called her stupid, but that wording implies that they were stupid.
Right.
And now I never hear that sentence anymore. After doing that a few times, I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it in at least 10 years. So
Which is great because it's a terrible thing to say to somebody. And it also, in that book that I mentioned, Courage to be
yeah,
Disliked, it also mentions that, this imbalance of power, right?
yeah,
By saying if you're smart, you would have done this, that means I'm smart
yeah,
and you therefore aren't, and you have this imbalance of power. So like when you get into an argument with somebody, let's totally go for politics. I freaking love
all right,
throwing that one at people.
okay,
Let's get into politics.
mm,
Like, what a circus. Good Lord. Are
okay,
people listening to themselves? No, they aren't. But when you get into a political discussion, a political argument, what does each side want? They want to win. They need to be right. They want to come out of that. It's always an argument, actually, these days. You can very rarely have a discussion. I keep trying, but, not getting very far. But when you come out of that exchange, somebody somewhere is trying to win. They are trying to get you to agree with them and will even go to the level of, well, you're an idiot if you think da da da
mm,
da da, and you're so stupid if you're going to vote for blah 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 blah, and they bring all this stuff up, and you're being bludgeoned
yeah,
into agreement, right? You have to agree with me, and they'll almost throttle you to get you to agree with them, kind of thing. The energy
yes,
is like that, and it's just wow, why do you have to be right? If you know what you're telling me, you feel it, integrally, it's part of you, you know that that's true, then you don't need anybody else to back you up. You don't need somebody else to agree with you because you know what you know. It
mhm,
is the insecure people, the people who don't know what they're talking about, literally, they don't know how to back up what they're saying. Those are the people who yell louder and really need you to agree with them. and they cannot tolerate dissent. They cannot tolerate that you don't fit into that box. And that's an insecurity right there. And the need to be liked, but more importantly, the need to be right. And when you let go of the need to be right, so many things disappear. You don't have to do the toxic positivity thing because somebody else telling you they have a problem isn't threatening to you. It's not damaging to you. You're able to hear them without an agenda of having to make everything fine because we're all happy here and everybody likes me, right? Like you don't have that desperation energy that comes from insecurity.
Yeah, it's funny because I had learned the how freeing it is to be prepared to be the enemy, how freeing it is to be prepared to be hated, and then saying what needed to be said and have it go well. I've had that happen to me enough times now that I still hit moments where I don't feel like talking about something because I don't want to go through the whole process. It's draining. But I've learned a lot of times that there is a benefit to being the person who is hated if you're doing the right thing. Like I again to go back to with parents and stuff, I always tell them your kids are going to hate you at some point anyways. So they might as well hate you for doing the right things, not hate you for doing bad things. Because if they hate you for doing good things, eventually they'll be old enough to understand you did good things for them and they'll come back to you.
And sometimes the timeline is a little different as well. I mean, I went through a divorce that
Mhm.
was, as many divorces are, really ugly.
Yeah.
And basically, what was happening was the other person was doing an awful lot of mudslinging, an
Mhm.
awful lot of name calling, and propagating stories that really it just shine a flashlight on them, and you can see it's not true.
Right.
But what happened there was I declined to defend myself. I
Mm-hmm.
declined to jump in and mudsling, to name call, to say that's not true, it's this, and da da da. I didn't do any of that. I just let the whole lot fly. And no, it wasn't fun. Yes, it was stressful, but I was in integrity with how I was showing up. And my rule of thumb for me to live by was I'm not going to say or do anything that I couldn't say or do in front of my kids, basically.
Yeah.
So, mudslinging and stuff, nope, didn't happen. Still not going to do it. This person is 50% of my kids' genetics. Why would I diss that?
Yes.
Not going to do it, you know? But it takes time when you take that approach. It takes time for people to be able to see, oh, hey, everything that we jumped into, everything that we believed might not have been strictly accurate. Those who care to look. And if they don't care to look, I don't care to be bothered about that. It was just such an interesting period because people were taking sides, and I've never understood that. Like, why? Were you in the marriage? No? Then why are you feeling the need to take sides with anybody?
Yeah.
I didn't seek people to take my side, and nor did I was a little surprised with exactly how that went down, but it was like, okay, so there's some clarity there. I learned a thing, but I did not get into that whole energy of mudslinging. And it's a pattern interrupt. Eventually, if you stop,
Yeah.
you don't go there, it will stop. It just, it runs out of fuel.
Yeah. It's interesting because you brought up that your children are 50% of your husband and it's your ex-husband, but it's true because like in situations where kids are abused by their parents, I try to avoid toxic positivity, but I also, if it's warranted, because you're right, because once the kids realize they get traits from that other parent, and if you only ever talk negative about them, then they start to wonder if they're negative as well.
Exactly. Well, that's the message you're
So
giving them.
even, so I try to balance it out, like because if someone says to a child, "Oh, you're like your whatever,"
Uh-huh.
the parent defending parent, I'm like, okay, listen, because usually I'll hear it. I'll hear about it after, usually from a child. I'll go, listen, okay, listen. Here's some things also about your parent that there's a some of those things that are said about your that parent is true, but here's some other stuff that you may have inherited. So maybe don't worry as much about being that way, or I'll, if I can, I'll explain why, to my understanding, why that person is that way in the first place, just so they can know. Because what I've noticed with kids is if they don't know, if they have hate towards another parent and they really hate what they're doing, they don't realize how that person got there, and then they run the risk of themselves becoming that way.
And there's so
Realizing,
much that they miss.
yeah,
There's so much that you miss out on, and there's no benefit to it. If you alienate a child from a parent, whatever you've got going on with that other person is nothing to do with the kid. It's not their fault. It's not their problem. You shouldn't make it their problem. And they're not a pawn to be used in this situation.
right.
It's just, 50% of the genetics is there, so honor that. That was what you chose, that was what you did, and now you're at this stage of the journey and that looks different. But it doesn't need to look different for the kid. You want them to have a great relationship with both parents if they can. And if
Mhm.
they
If they
can't,
can.
then if they can and if they can't, then at least give them room to develop an understanding of why things went down the way they did. And, life's journey, we do an awful lot of pretending that these relationships are supposed to be wonderful and they're supposed to last forever. Do you know the only contract we have in human existence that you can't get out of is a marriage contract? It's the only one that you can't have a sort of, okay, situation's changed, I want out of my contract. Here's the deal. Like, it's not an easy thing. People say divorce is really easy, but that's generally before they've been through one. Try it on for size. It's not fun. It's not something that you're going to do lightly if you've been in a real relationship. There's situations, and what I like to say is that it's not a failed marriage. It's an ended relationship.
Yes.
You've completed what you came to do with that person, and so mudslinging is not required. But toxic positivity is also, it's misplaced to say the least, and it stops people from expressing what's going on for them. I think there's a place where you can express what's happening in a respectful way, and you don't have to polish over everything and pretend everything's wonderful when it isn't. How many people are suffering because of that? They're pretending everything's great and it isn't.
Yes. Well, yeah. I was gonna say, but I was gonna. What you said about divorce brings me back actually to the episode we did on love, and
Okay.
that's kind of how I started to look at. When I had discussed, right, I was rooting for the character to be the reincarnation of the person's, love of their life, but they ended up they weren't. But the reality is, and I think what the story was actually trying to say is that that story's done. There's a
Hmm.
new story unfolding here. And so actually that kind of brought it back to me to episode eight. Yeah, episode eight, I think it was. And was that brought me back to it just when you said that. It's true. Relationships come to an end. They have the reason for existing. And not to, some relationships will last a lifetime, but relationships run the course they need to run.
They do. And, each person ideally is growing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you grow in the same direction or you grow in a compatible direction, that's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. But if you don't, or if your energies are mismatched to such a degree that you no longer kind of meet in the middle, you don't sort of have that
Mm-hmm.
connection anymore, then I think it's fair to say that it's time to move on, both energetically and personally, physically, because you've done what you came to do. That's completed. And why would anybody want the other person to be there when there's nothing there anymore?
Yes.
It's just it's kind of hard to explain it more clearly than that. But it's basically, that was then, this is now. A whole lot of stuff has happened between start and finish.
Yes.
And what an incredible journey. Now the next stage looks different.
Yes.
And that's not putting anybody down or saying anybody's less than or anything. It's just this is where the paths change. Rivers don't flow in the same direction all the time.
That's right. They branch out. Things go
They
different
branch out.
directions. it is an interesting way of. No, I think you had the idea better. Maybe I shouldn't interfere with the flow of that. Let that one go be its own thing. Um, nope, still not my turn.
Is it not? Wow. Well, throw a thing at me that you'd another question, perhaps?
Okay, here. Let me look at here. The list right here. Can toxic behavior have a positive effect? We discussed that because
Yes.
it's kind of the second time it was asked in a way.
Okay, well, short answer is no.
Mm.
I don't see a positive effect because there's no room for discussion, there's no room for development, there's no room for growth. You're just shutting someone up.
Mm.
That's basically what it is. And I don't see shutting people up as being helpful.
Right.
It might on occasion be a temporary solution, but to shut someone up, but I would still do it differently. Maybe just say this is not the time or place, or okay, let's set a time to have that discussion. Like you put it where you can handle it if you can't handle it in the moment. But shutting it up by, plastering it is not positive, not helpful, no.
Yes, you already interacted with this question when I asked it. Um, but we were asked to discuss about not feeling sad and not feeling, is it sad and angry? It's funny because
Those uncomfortable emotions
yeah,
that get squashed from the get-go, right? The kid is mad. These
yeah,
days, actually, it's become even more convoluted because these days, if a child's angry about something, chances are their parent is going to film it and put it on TikTok, or their parents going
yeah.
to film it, laugh at them, and
That's
then put it out there for the world to see. Now, I cannot adequately express how damaging that is to the
mm,
child. Wow. Like, what the hell are you doing by filming your kid, putting that on the internet for the world to see, and ridiculing them by laughing at them
mm,
because they're angry or because they did something that was a mistake? This is so damaging. One little video that I
mm,
remember seeing
mm,
was, now it was a Australian kid, I guess,
okay,
who was looking out the window and the kid said, "Look, there's a fucking goat." And the
yeah,
parent was filming and
mm,
laughing and saying, "No, no, it's just a goat." And the child turned and looked at the parent with such confusion and said, "No, no, it's a fucking goat," and
yeah,
pointed to the goat that was eating the garden. Now, of course, what happened there was the parent has obviously been heard
mm,
many times saying, "There's a
yeah,
fucking goat in the garden," right? And this is the language a child heard.
yes,
So she's correctly using it to the best of her understanding because that is in fact a fucking goat. The parent has never called it just a goat, right?
yep,
But now this kid is all over the internet with the parent laughing,
yeah,
and the world is laughing as well because it was kind of funny, but it should have been private. And the parent needed to understand that that child didn't make a mistake. That child is mirroring what you taught them.
hmm
So this kid now grows up with this being all over the internet, and one day somebody is going to put it together. Hey, is that you in that video? My mom showed me that the other day, or this surfaced in this place. This kid's never going to get away from it. Wow. As a parent, what did you just do? That is abusive on so many levels, it's not funny. And yet, if you say something, and often I do say something, you get, "Oh, you're such a spoil sport, and what do you know anyway? And you're a killjoy, and da da da." And people miss the point that why don't you just stop and look at that and think about it from the kid's perspective? You don't
hmm
have to agree with me, but maybe just pause for a moment and consider, is that the most helpful thing you could do? Putting your kids all over the internet. Even now, my kids are adult. I ask their permission before I put their picture up about anything. I ask their permission. Their girlfriends, I ask their permission first. I wouldn't dream of posting something that they said no to
Hmm.
because they have agency. They are responsible for themselves. Likewise, I wouldn't want somebody posting pictures of me if I didn't say it was okay first.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just,
to go with your example of the goat. I remember also watching, especially, I don't know if it was, I think it was more popular last year, but people would bring their kids and say, okay, we're going to learn up, we're going to make a cake, and they're filming it. And then they crack the egg on the kid's head.
yes,
I
yes,
remember the one little girl, you can see the moment right in her face. You can see the minute her heart breaks.
yes.
That one video, you can,
Yeah. And I have called that one out a number of times because it's a hideous thing to do to your kid, period. But then
mm,
laughing at the child afterwards, the damage is incalculable. And people are typically not understanding that this is really damaging to the child. They just think it's funny.
yeah,
And
because the
that is a
comment section
disconnect.
is pretty rough when I look down to see what people were going to say about it.
Uh-huh.
And the amount of people who were saying like, "Oh, it's just a joke. The kid will get over it." I'm like, did you not see her face when the egg hit her head? Like, that's a child who was like, "That's I don't even like." The kid's reality was shattered.
Absolutely. And the child now knows that this adult is A, not safe, B, doesn't think very much of them because that's the message that that conveys, and that they are a subject for ridicule. Their self-esteem was shattered in that moment. Their trust in their parent was shattered in that moment. Like, and frankly, I wouldn't leave one of my puppies with a parent that did that. I think it's absolutely gross behavior. But even more worrying is the number of people that defend it and say, "Oh,
Yeah.
but it's no big deal. You're making a big fuss about nothing." And I'm horrified that we've reached that stage as a society to be so far removed from even our own experience. As a child, how would you have felt with that? Wow. And if you're even remotely sensitive, and newsflash, people, kids are, in fact, always sensitive. This is the nature of the learning human,
Hmm.
right? You give that as an imprint as a little kid.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you a kid that's in therapy later or in jail or at least in an abusive relationship
Yeah.
because she just learned something really significant about how insignificant she is
Hmm.
and that the parent isn't even there for them. So if the parent isn't, who is? Nobody? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now you've got room to make a whole heap of poor choices. And where did that come from? Yes, it came from something as simple as smashing an egg on their forehead.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny
Wow.
because it goes back for me even further. I remember, I don't know if you've ever seen the show. I know it was in repeats for a lot of times. America's Funniest Home Videos.
Oh, well,
The
Instagram does that stuff now.
Yeah, and the amount of like I had stopped watching it long before the run ended because I was like looking at him going, if I call into a police station in that person's hometown, the whole case is aired right there on television. Like, I remember watching videos of like you see the kid's gonna run into something and they keep filming and they don't stop the child. And I'm like, you can see it coming as the viewer of the video, you know what's happening. So why aren't the parents, you know,
Yeah.
right on the camera stopping
And
the
and
kid?
why are you filming instead of parenting?
Yeah.
What are you? You're just here for TikTok likes and,
Mhm.
your kids' collateral damage? What is that? As a society, where have we gone with this? And to me, the people who are doing this are so disconnected from their spiritual selves
Mhm.
to their awareness of something bigger than their own freaking egos that it's horrifying to me. It makes me nervous for where we're going as a species. This is
Yeah.
not, it might sound like it's a big deal about nothing, but I assure you, it is a small deal about a very big thing. I cannot make a big enough deal out of it.
For a very practical view on this, so go back to politics. But this is from actually the 2020 election in the States. So there was a new YouTube channel. It was two, I want to say, just finished college people, a guy and a girl, and they were going to Trump rallies as Trump supporters themselves and having just genuine conversations with people.
Mhm.
And I'm watching it. I'm thinking, oh, this will be interesting, right? Because it's going to be no one putting their bias and no filters, no one editing things to make them look bad, just honestly from that perspective. And in a way, it was incredibly heartbreaking to watch for me because these people were having genuine conversations and they were like nice to each other and kind. But the people they were interviewing and putting on, just as these are regular people, it was if you wanted to make fun of a Trump supporter, these are the people you would have picked. And then you would have said things to try to trip them up and to make them look foolish. But instead, these are people who were having genuine conversations. And it was almost just heartbreaking to see people because you're seeing why they support Trump and you see how unheard they feel by the general
Yeah.
public. And I always tell people, I said, like, before you make, because people will watch videos of people making fun of Trump supporters. I'm like, no, no, watch a video of someone who is legitimately a Trump supporter talking to someone who's a Trump supporter, and not the ones that have all these conspiracy theories, but just the people who are there because they want to see change. And I says, and watch those videos. And if you can still sit around and call Trump supporters stupid and evil, I says, you're going to get into a rude awakening because these people aren't the ones you're seeing are the ones who get you the most views, the ones you're watching people being incredibly stupid. It's not that there aren't supporters like that because you have your zealots in every group, and
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
there's always people to ruin a good thing. When you
Yep.
start an organization and try to do something good, there's always going to be people try to take advantage of it to stir trouble.
You
But it
also
was
have a lot of
almost heartbreaking to
people.
watch these people have a genuine conversation about, why they think Trump should be the president because their life needs to change because their life is so they feel so disassociated, you know. And
And
these are
it
people
goes
who I
right back to not being seen, not being heard. And that is a huge problem. And it happens continually. We're doing it endemically and pandemically. Like it's all around the world that we're just not listening, not paying attention. We pick out the stuff that we want that validates what we already think,
right.
and we run with that. And anybody that disagrees, there seems to be a couple of extremes going on right now, which is either you're going to yell at them and tell them they're stupid, or you're going to toxic positivity them to death. But either way, it's just no, there's no conversation here. Agree with me or you're wrong,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to listen to anything that tells me otherwise. And I've tried to have some
Mm,
interesting conversations with
right.
people about politics, and I will literally say, okay, I am in the middle here. Please tell me why you think your person is the best person for the job. And they start with, well, the other ones, da da da. No, no, not what I asked you.
Mm,
Tell me why your person is somebody that deserves a vote. I mean, it's a genuine question to both sides, mind you.
yes.
I'm not, my question is equal for each. Tell me what is good about this person. Why am I going to benefit from giving them my trust? Tell me. And that throws people for a loop like you would not believe, or maybe you would believe, but they're
I
not
do.
prepared for that question. And I'm like, well, why do you expect me to vote for your person then?
Mm,
Don't just yell at me and tell me I'm an idiot on either side, I might add. Yeah,
right.
that's not going to persuade me,
Well,
bludgeon me into doing something.
and that's the thing when you say that because like so I'm in Canada and the debates are just as heated. I'm like, first of all, that's not your dog, not your fight, first of all. I says, but you're not paying attention to what your own side is doing.
Right.
You're listening to the other side and say, "Oh my God, look at all those terrible things," but then you're not paying attention. You're not seeing it because
Exactly.
I've noticed that people are willing to forgive their own side. I used to do it when I was younger, and then I thought to myself, "But if I'm saying, well, this is what they really meant, or they didn't mean it that way," and I'm sitting here going, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I'm doing this on my side. They're doing it on their side, but when they do it on their side, I tell them, quit being so stupid. Well, hold on, I'm doing it too, just
Right.
for the people I agree with." So then I started to go, okay, if I'm going to apply that standard to the people I disagree with, I'm applying it to the standard of the people I agree with too. And then that's how I became politically homeless.
What a great way of putting
Yeah.
it. And that's why I'm in the position I'm in right now, and it upsets people because I won't agree with their view necessarily. I mean, I'm still waiting to see what's good for either side. Really tell me. And there are those who think, well, it's obvious. How can you miss it? Well, nobody's articulated it yet. Try me. Tell me. I know what you think I should be seeing,
Right.
but why? Where is it? Like, you're telling me these things, but I'm not seeing the evidence. Where is what you're telling me? And it's a bit like somebody saying, well, you believe this religion because you have to take it on faith.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you sell it to me a little more? Because all religions have that.
Hmm.
Everybody says you got to take it on faith. Um, what else? What else are you going to tell me? You know,
Yeah.
and if you're not going to tell me anything else, don't be mad when I don't decide your way.
Hmm.
It's not personal. I'm trying to figure something out here. I'm trying to understand what the benefits and detriments are to each side. And I don't think any of them are ideal or going to be the answer. Not at all. The question is, how are we just going to navigate this next bit with the least damage possible?
Yeah.
That's and to the least damage to, well, everybody across the board, because some people are being marginalized and left out of the equation. And that's a very dangerous thing to do because they are all going to go vote for the other side.
Yes.
And I see that happening. I hear that happening. And it's like, well, I'm with you in that I'm in that group, but I'm not following the herd to say, okay, this person says they're going to look after us.
Hmm.
Show me the track record, show me the evidence, show me
Yes.
anything. Show me
That
anything.
is so, that question, show me how they voted. Like me, as much as I like conversations about politics, I am currently at a point where I find it tiresome. But
Oh, utterly.
one of the questions that always come to my mind is, well, how did they vote? Like,
Right.
because you'd be surprised. Like, the first time this really came to my mind was with George Bush Jr. And someone had pointed out, if you look at his voting as a governor and how he voted as president, it's not the same guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, like, well, that's pretty interesting. But I understood, at least my understanding of his presidency, he was just a figurehead, and pretty much it was the behind the scenes that ran it, right? Rumsfeld and I can't think of his vice president. Anyways, you know, the man
Well,
who shot his friend in the face and his friend apologized for getting in the way of the shot.
right.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
listen, if that doesn't tell you evil, I don't know what else to tell you. A
the
press
thing
conference
is
to apologize for getting in the way of the shot.
the thing is with the topic of politics in particular, but not only,
Right,
there's just there's so much where people are determined that you have to agree with them, and they have a whole story about what it means if you don't,
right,
and nobody's actually looking at what's going on. It's a distraction. It's a huge distraction. Like I've seen in social media, the number of distractions going on are crazy. Somebody will post this guy or woman, like whatever, Leah Thomas, who
right,
was once, I think, Ian Thomas. I'm not sure. But the point is, there was a huge controversy over swimming as a woman
right,
and where this person rated when a male, where this person rated as a female in swimming, right? I was a big to do. And then they made their decisions, medals stripped, yada yada. And then a week later, I see the whole thing blown up again. And then a week later, I see the whole thing blown up again. And it kept coming up, and people were jumping in and getting mad and yelling their opinions. This person says they're a woman, therefore they're a woman.
mm,
No, there's no such thing, and da da da. And they're all fighting again. And I'm like, what are you fighting over? This is very old news by this point.
yes,
It's been discussed, it's been hashed out, decisions were made. Like a Mullivan, those decisions were made. Can we please move on? But no, And I'm pretty sure it's bots that keep bringing this stuff up to distract people. And it's
Yes.
working. That's the sad part, is it's working. And people are like looking at the wrong stuff. It's just you're looking for something to be dramatic, to yell about. And I've mentioned this in a previous
Mm.
podcast, but I think a lot of it has to do with COVID and people losing their sense of purpose.
Yes.
The lack of purpose means that they're looking for something, anything to be relevant with,
Mm.
to have a stance on that they can like, yeah, look at me, I'm gonna wear my keffiyeh and yell at people and threaten you with death and all those things, and that's a good thing, right? Like, yeah, no, it isn't. But this kind of thing has blown up so much because people didn't have anything anchoring them. They didn't have a purpose.
Yes.
This all
That's
shifted with COVID.
that's pretty much it. You know, I'd even go further, like as far as the greater society, even though it's even earlier than, but to give it a definite spot, COVID definitely put the nail in the coffin of the
Yep.
concept. I would also attribute it to Donald Trump being elected because here in Canada, once he got elected, the quality of news went south fast. Like, so the CBC, the government sponsored news here, there was a rally in well southern Ontario, so somewhere near Toronto, more specifically. But I'm trying to think exactly where it was. But the reporter, the person reading, at least the person reading the story, said there were six racists at this rally, whatever. And I'm like, six racists, and they're describing them. They're saying, well, they were wearing MAGA hats, and I'm like, well, you don't know if they're racist just because they're wearing a MAGA hat. Like there are people of other races who believe in the make America great again. But that was the reporting, and I'm like, well, did they say racial slurs? Did they do anything other than wearing a red hat that said MAGA on it that told you they were racist? Because this is how it's being presented, and I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not responsible journalism.
Well, that's the problem is that I would argue there is no responsible journalism now, and it's been fraught, I would say, for a while, but we
But that's
we
what I
just
mean.
don't,
Like it's
yeah, we
even
don't
in the
have any,
90s, there
it's
were
it's
talks
all
about
an agenda now. It's all agenda driven. And you can see that well, no, I don't recommend anybody watch CNN.
that.
But if you looked at CNN, they very clearly have a bias. And there's just no question um, about how the bias looks. And if you look at Fox News, it's the same thing. It's a different bias, but they both have them. And, pick another news station, they're all the same. So what we're being bombarded with is people's agendas. And I just think we've lost touch with the ability to critical think, the ability to ask questions. And again, looping it back to the toxic positivity thing, a lot of that comes from places where the ground is infertile for discussion. You cannot have a conversation where there's learning happening because either you're going to be yelled at and told you're an idiot, or you're going to get the same message but with a smiley face where somebody says, "Oh, no, everything's wonderful,"
Yeah.
and it's the same message either way,
Mm.
which is what you have to say is not going to be heard. Stop talking.
Yes.
And, that neither of them are good. One is obviously in your face, but the other one, the toxic positivity, there's a reason it's called that. And it's a weapon. People use
Mm.
it, and they're
Yeah.
just like, nope, I don't want to hear what you're saying. So I'm going to throw this at you. And now you can't argue. See, that's the other thing is if somebody's telling you, yes, but everything's wonderful, what are you going to argue with? Like, no, you're wrong. Okay, well, we're all entitled to our view, but
Opinion,
everything's
yes.
wonderful here. And there's no opening. You still cannot speak. And it's not the case that if you disagree, you're bringing everybody down, not at all. I mean, you might have that intention, but nobody knows because nobody listens when you disagree. So,
Yeah.
it's like, where is the development here of constructive coping mechanisms, constructive growth? Like we're getting stunted. As a
Yeah,
species, we're getting stunted, and it bothers me tremendously because I see it happening, and it affects everybody.
yeah. I don't know why, but it made me think of something I saw today, where people don't realize what they're doing. Like when they first tried to ban TikTok, when it went in front of Congress, talk about it, and they're saying, "Oh, all you're seeing is teenage girls, whatever, in scantily clad," and I'm like, and a lot of people rightfully pointed out, the algorithm shows you what you look at.
Right?
But today I seen the same thing. There was a woman talking about how come there's all these young girls in their underwear on the videos, and I'm like, I've never seen that.
Because that's what you're looking at, I
Right.
guess.
Because I have this one policy. If the person is underage and they're doing anything sexual, like if they're underage and they're not exhibiting like a talent, I just flip the video right away, just skip. And if they ask me if I want to see anything like that again, I say no. I says, unless they're like showing a painting or playing a musical instrument or, doing something really brilliant, anyone under 18 does not show up on my feed.
Right.
So, and then I follow a lot of herbalists. I follow a lot of artists, a lot of musicians, carpenters, woodwork, anyone who does like anything in the arts or even anything scientific. So I don't get all these things that people are complaining about. And I'm like, well, that's you. Like, I
And
don't
they
know.
don't realize they don't realize that what they're complaining about is actually a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like what this mirror is showing me.
Yeah.
Well, hey, don't look at it first thing in the morning. But the other thing
Yeah.
is, don't
Yeah, I really don't know. Like
don't
morning is not
complain
friendly here for mirrors.
don't complain about the algorithm that's showing you. It's your mirror showing you what you look at. I mean, you can be on any of the social medias and
Mm-hmm.
just look up one time shoes, and suddenly you will get every second post is shoes of that type. Maybe they're running shoes.
Yeah.
And that'll last for weeks until you finally, gives the algorithm something else to throw at you. So, being careful of what you're showing to people, I think this is something that um, people aren't very aware of right now. And they will be at some point, particularly when their kids are older and they say, "Hey, why did you put that video of me out there?"
Yes.
Um, you're reflecting yourself out for other people to
Mm-hmm.
see. This is the kind of parent I am. This is how reliable I am. These are my political views. Like once upon a time, people wouldn't ask you how you're going to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody wants to know how you're going to vote. Isn't it supposed to be private? Like,
Yeah.
why would I have to say? Here in the US, you can tell people, you tell the state or wherever that this is the political party I'm affiliated with, and then
Mm-hmm.
they'll send you all the stuff for
Yeah.
that political party, and you get to vote on the local people, etc., etc. I don't do that.
Yeah.
Wherever I live, I say I am unaffiliated. Please send me everything.
Yeah.
I get
That
everybody's stuff.
that
Nobody
confused
needs to
me. Yeah.
know.
That actually confused me when I hear about that. Like, I'll listen to people like because I used to listen to some political podcasts. Some of them have just stopped existing, so I don't hear them anymore. But that has always confused me, depending on the state you're in. And I understand each state is responsible for the election, for their
Right.
own way of doing the election. But I'm like, why do you have to register as anything to cast your vote? Like that
Oh
makes
no,
no
you
sense.
have an option. You
Yeah.
you can register as unaffiliated, which I do, because each cycle is different. I don't know who I'm going to vote
Yeah.
for. Show me what you got, and I'll make my decision. But it depends. I offer blind allegiance to no one.
Mm. Well, that's the thing. I
That
actually
is
talked
the
to,
thing.
I was talking with one of my cousin's husbands one time, and I said, you know what? I'd really love to be the kind of person that blindly trusts people. Like sometimes you'll see, like, especially you'll see it in like dramas and stuff like that, where the person just like, oh, so and so said it. Well, then it must be right. Or they'll like completely blindly trust the answer. And I'm like, how do you do that? I says, I know I make mistakes, and I've seen other people make mistakes, so I give more weight to their opinion, but I still need to verify for myself
Of
in the end.
course.
So I'm
Hopefully.
like, what people who can, even people in real life who say those kinds of things, I'm like, how do you blindly accept that? Like, that's the
Why
strangest thing to me in the world.
I don't actually want to be the person who does that. I very intentionally don't do that because it's not okay. First of all, it's not fair to the person who you're blindly
Mm,
trusting. Even if they like it, even if they think it's a good idea, it's still not fair to them because when they make a mistake, being human, this will happen. When they make a mistake, now there's a whole lot of, all kinds of stuff going on, depending. Resentment, hurt feelings, yada yada, like whatever it is. Could be financial loss, could be any number of things, right? If you blindly trust.
mhm,
So I don't think it's helpful for that person's growth either to have people blindly trusting them. And this, funnily enough, it leads me to human design
mm,
because as I have a science background and
yeah,
I use science in my work, I do have people say to me, that's really weird that you do human design as well. Like, doesn't that bother you? Like, it's not science. How does that not bother you? And the answer is it is science, it's living science.
yeah,
I tell you what I see in your human design, and you go test it. I don't actually want you to trust what I'm saying. That's pointless. There's no agency in that. If
mm,
I tell you that you have this particular gift, you can bet your bottom dollar I want you to go out and play with that and see
yeah,
what works. Like,
mm,
is it true? Does it work for you? And if you just trust me that it is, then maybe you might not take action. Or maybe you'll have a bias that says, well, I believe this is true, therefore it's true. And you find things to back that up. But have you had the full experience? Not if you're not testing it.
yeah,
So I tell people, no, don't take my word for it. That's not what we're here for. Please take this, put your white coat on as a
mm,
scientist, go test it, get repeatable results. Then you'll know you have a thing. Like, so yeah, it works for me totally. I think it's better than trusting some science that was developed in the 40s. We're a
mm,
different species now.
yeah,
Things are different now. So maybe we need to revisit that science and have another look. And the whole point of science is that you question everything, including you get these results. Okay, question them again. That's
yeah,
science. So to me, human design is actually the epitome of science, at
mm,
least the way I use it.
yeah. It's
It's there to
funny
be
because
used that way.
yeah, it's funny because I always think of like because Neil deGrasse Tyson said it, Stephen Hawking said it, and I know there's a few others who said it, but they said we don't need philosophy anymore. And I'm like, well, first of all, science comes from philosophy, so that's the first one. But I said, never mind that. Think about that for a second, because one of the things in philosophy is, science asks questions, but philosophy is asking yourself, why did you ask that question? And why do you trust that result? And why do you think, you
Yeah,
know?
why would they say that?
Well, I always use this analogy when it comes to Neil deGrasse Tyson that if you've seen the Superman movies with Christopher Reeves, you know that so the Lex Luthor, why can't I think of his name? Anyway, there's a whole scene where he's talking about how some people, you can put them in a library with all the books in the world and they'll never learn anything. And some people will discover the secrets of the universe through reading the ingredients on a bubblegum wrapper. And
Right.
I always think of Neil deGrasse Tyson as, you know, the first one, having all this access to information, but never really putting it together properly.
Hmm.
It's not
Okay.
that he's a bad scientist or anything like that, but it's just that when I hear people talk about him, I'm like, oh my God, this guy is awesome. And I'm gonna start listening to him. And when I start listening again, it's not long before I see, oh, see, he has this bias, and he was raised smart means you're better. And and then I'm like, and I can see now all the why he makes the decisions he makes, and I see where the bias creeps in. And I'm not doing that from the perspective of saying I'm perfect because I get caught. That's why I say you can never just blindly trust because my when I start filtering information, my biases kick in.
Hmm.
And I'm bad with that for music. There's songs that, someone will ask me, do you like this song? I'll say, no, I hate it. And they'll say, why? And I'll give my reasoning. And then they'll go, okay, now listen to that song again. But listen to it with fresh ears. And then I'll go through and I'm like, oh, that was me projecting onto the song and not what the song was actually saying.
Huh. That's
And I'm like,
interesting.
oh, that's why I made the mistake and why and then I'm fine with the song after once I realize it. To give an example of a song, was that one with Eminem and Rihanna. I
Oh
like the
yeah.
way you lie.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, great, another song, glorifying being stupid and being in toxic relationships, awesome. But then someone said, who was their favorite song, said to me, okay, here's my perspective on the song. And I listened and I went, oh, I see what you're saying. It's not so much that you're worried about the words, but you're worried but it's that the song expresses something that you're feeling, and you have a perspective on when Rihanna's answer to his words are, I like the way you lie, is because when you're deep in a bad relationship, you know, there's things that make you feel comfortable in that. But I'm like, but the thing is, I just looked at it as, oh, it's glorifying another crappy relationship. I didn't even
Right.
give it the scrutiny to really pay attention to what the actual message was of the song.
Well, we only have so much time in the day,
Well,
right?
exactly.
You can't scrutinize everything. And I mean, as human beings,
Mhm.
80% of what we do is on automatic.
Yeah.
And you cannot scrutinize everything. And I wouldn't
Mhm.
begin to pretend to. But that's one of the reasons why philosophy is actually so
Mhm.
important. I'm quite mind blown that scientists would say you don't need it, because of course you do. Philosophy gives you perspectives. So I said earlier on, now psychology and
Mhm.
philosophy, and these are all different shades of the same kind of direction, different
Mhm.
ways of looking at things, right? But
Mhm.
when you look at Adlerian psychology, most people haven't even heard of this. And yet it's really holds a lot of value for people trying to sort out relationships and how they show up in them, and also what kind of people they gravitate towards, because it uncovers that whole psychology uncovers what we make things mean and kind of how we go with that. Then when you bring in philosophy, you've got perspectives on that,
Mhm.
and you can choose the one that works for you in the moment. I mean, obviously you're going to go with whatever fits you best, but
Mhm.
philosophy's out there to give different perspectives, different approaches. And maybe something works when you're a teenager and it's different when you're in your 20s, which is different when you're in your 30s. I mean, you are not the same person. If I met you when you were 20,
Mhm.
I probably wouldn't recognize you, because you are now a different
Yeah.
person in a different space doing different things. I
Yes.
would hope so, because otherwise, where have you been? What was your
Yes.
point of being on the planet? If you're not developing, then you're undeveloping, right? It's
Mhm.
growth or it's atrophy. It's not,
Yeah.
we don't stay stagnant. There is no
That's true.
possibility to stay stagnant. So you're either growing or you're atrophying. And that is a choice at any given time, and it's not always an easy one to make, but yeah, philosophy's kind of, we have to have that. Boy, way to break the moral compass. Way to just like smash that sucker out of the place. Whew.
Yeah. Well, I had a discussion one time, or I was responding to something, and the person had posted, you know, uh, religion is the cause of a lot of wars. And I responded with, yes. However, it takes science to really fuck things up. Like, someone in a religion is not going to be dropping nuclear bombs on someone unless someone invents the nuclear bombs. Someone is
Right.
not going to be shooting guns at someone unless someone invents, works with gunpowder and all the ballistics and all that. So I said, as much as yes, religion can inspire a lot of wars, or to even use John Stewart's, wording on it, religion is the comfort, is the thing that offers comfort from all the wars caused by religion.
Yeah. I mean, religion is abused as much as anything,
Yes.
right?
Well, and that's the thing, right? Early
Because,
on in my life, it had dawned on me religion at its core is just teaching you how to live a way to live your life.
Mhm,
And then,
should be.
well, I mean, to me, that's the original intention of religion.
Mhm.
But over time, like any system, once there's an organization, there's people to take advantage of the organization.
Well, it
And then,
was created. I mean, religion is basically created by people who want to organize and control other people.
right.
And you have those who use it in a benevolent way,
Mhm.
And you have those who absolutely 100% don't. And unfortunately, the majority would appear to be the ones who use it for self-gain and for
Unfortunately, yes. Mm,
agendas that are a big problem for a lot of people. People are going to suffer from this. And, the Spanish Inquisition, for example,
yes.
burning witches, which actually means burning women, because that was a way to stop women from doing anything other, don't even want to leave the house, because if you do, you could be in trouble, and being in trouble means you get burnt or drowned in order to prove that you're innocent. Like it was pretty damn drastic. But religion was the name used for this, but that wasn't really like it was an agenda with a veneer of religion, if you
Yes.
will. And you have a whole political thing going on in the US now where you
Mm,
have right-wing Christians, and I use the term
mm,
Christian really loosely because actually a political group, but they're
yeah.
trying to use a word that makes them untouchable in the US, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
If you bring your religion into things, typically people are gonna like back off, unless you say you're Jewish, in which case you're in trouble. But everybody else gets a whole pass. Everybody else gets to be okay because they mentioned religion. Well, that is a cover for an awful lot of abuse, a huge amount of abuse of the people who are in that religion, but also they use it to abuse people who aren't in the religion. Like you don't get out of this one. It's either way, you come in their path, you're in trouble, one way or the other. And ask anyone who has left one of those religions what that experience was
Mm,
like, and you're going to hear an awful lot of horror stories from it. I know two people who left Jehovah's Witness, for
mm.
example. Okay, that could be a podcast on its own.
Yeah.
Really long podcast on its own, but the abuse is
Yeah.
wild. And how many people stay in it
Mm,
because they are abused into it?
yeah. It's funny.
It's brutal. And
A
that's
woman
just
I
one I'm
worked with.
picking out.
Yeah.
You could pick any.
Yeah. A woman I worked with was a Jehovah's Witness, and she was talking about something at the office one day. And she was saying, it's unfortunate, so and so, whatever, got can't remember the name of the word for it, not exiled,
Ex-
but disowned or whatever,
Excommunicated?
excommunicated probably.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there like, why were they excommunicated? And then I don't remember the reason, but I remember it was something like that I couldn't have cared less about. And I'm
Right.
like, you're telling me someone who's dear to you is now excommunicated from a community that you are basing your spirituality on for whatever the reason was that I thought was really stupid. I'm like, you're telling me
Yep.
this is a thing right now in this day and
Yep.
age.
Oh, the one woman I'm thinking of, her kids, she couldn't see her kids anymore. Like she grew up in that community
Mm,
and nobody from that community had anything to do with her. After
mm,
she said, you know what, I'm in an abusive marriage and I don't want to stay here and be hit all the time and be told by the elders that it's okay and I
yeah,
have to put up with it. I'm leaving. And now she has no contact with her kids, her grandchildren, the people she grew up with, none of her relatives. She has been shunned by the entire community because she wouldn't put up with the abuse. I mean, what the ever loving are we doing here? But this is the ultimate control. You
mhm,
will stay and you will put up with everything we say because the alternative is to be cut off from the tribe, which, as we
yeah,
know, is the way to die, right? Like
yeah,
you get thrown out, the saber-toothed tiger eats you. And you can bet that people who experience that go through an awful lot of mental illness and lots of
mm,
depression and anxiety. And how could they do other than? Like, of course they're going to go through that. And if they ever get out of it, kudos, because it's such a huge control mechanism that they've been bludgeoned with from the get-go. Like, it's awful. And some of the things I've seen people put up with are quite staggering. Like you just no other situation would you be okay with this. This is really
yeah.
exceptionally bad, and yet you stay because it's your religion. Wow. What manner of religion asks you to deal with that? What manner of benevolent God requests that you stay in a situation where you're being beaten?
Yeah,
Really?
And it does tie to back to witches and wizards. It's the when your spirituality is based on basically gods who are being who require obedience to the point of abuse. Like I am, as an adult, and even like, well, like with most teenagers, once you hit that age, and you split from whatever you're like, if you were anywhere near the Christian religion or anything that has a heaven or hell,
Mhm.
especially a hell, it becomes like, why would you torment someone for eternity when you lived maybe 75, 80 years, depending on, and you made a mistake, and this mistake is so unforgivable for that span, and you were probably, in a bad place when you did it, but you're punished for eternity.
Or maybe it's not even something that anybody else would consider bad,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the thing is who is the arbiter of what is damning and what isn't?
Hmm.
Who gets to say that? And why do they think that they can do that? And oh boy, you just sparked one in me with that thing.
Yeah.
Cancel culture.
Well, yes.
Cancel culture is another aspect of stopping people from expressing
Yeah.
themselves. And I have had a pretty hot dispute with somebody over the subject of cancel culture. And at one point, she said to me, well, how do we make sure that the bad people don't say things we don't like if we don't have cancel culture? And I was stunned. Like literally, I was stunned into silence for a moment or two. Not because what she was saying was so right, but because I was stunned that an adult would say
Yeah.
something like that, first of all, because that sounded infantile to my ears,
Hmm.
but also the staggering arrogance of this person that she assumed automatically that she was on the side of right
Yeah.
and that what she determined warranted somebody being cancelled. And let's be clear about what being cancelled means.
Yeah.
It means that they're doing their best to disrupt your livelihood, your ability to provide for yourself, for your family, if you have one. Like they are trying to erase you from the book of life.
Hmm.
This is what cancel culture means. So this person is taking it upon herself to determine who can exist and who can't in really ultimately take it to its conclusion.
Yeah.
That is the decision. This person is an acceptable human being. That person is not an acceptable human being. I don't like that they said this thing or that they did this thing. Wow, how did we get to that place where this is even a possibility? Like somebody else thinks they're going to erase me, for example,
Yeah.
from the face of the earth. Like, really? You're going to cut off my means to make a living, my ability to show up in the world? Like, I can't have an opinion without being cut off?
Mm.
Wow. Why?
Yeah.
Where did we get that from? Because the level of arrogance is mind-blowing. Like, I would be shocked if a member of the royal family came out with something like that. And they're born to arrogance, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't even imagine how did a person arrive at that conclusion? And how is she so damn sure that she's on the right side of it? Like, ooh, that's a
Yeah.
lot of assumption.
Well, as the expression goes, right? The people who burn the books are rarely the good guys,
Right.
if never the
Yes.
good guys.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And
And yet no one ever realizes it. Or at least people keep calling themselves the good guys, and yet they keep burning the books.
well, yeah, it's like I see this meme now and then and it rings true every time. How were we made to be afraid of witches instead of the people who burned them?
Yeah. Because you would think they'd be scarier.
Well, I do. Yes, the people who burn them are people like this woman with her cancel culture
Yeah.
and feeling perfectly entitled. And the word entitled is warranted here. You know, she
Yes.
feels totally entitled to do that and to be a part of that and to agree with it and initiate it if necessary, etc. Like she's fully on board with all that cancel culture means. How? Like, How did we get to that for a
Hmm.
space of staggering arrogance? Like, woo!
Well,
I would not want to be in that person's environment. And since we had that discussion,
mhm,
I have not been in that person's environment because I will not be a party
yeah,
to that.
it's um, it's a very. I'll put it like this: when to go back to politics, when Trump first ran for president, and so CNN, because I would watch Fox and I'd watch CNN just to see what the coverage is like, because it's always
Yeah.
interesting to see, right, what takes they have.
Oh, yeah.
So it's interesting to note that they're the same advertisers.
Huh.
Yeah.
Covering their bets.
Yes. So I would watch on Fox, they would let his whole speeches go. And then I would watch on CNN and they would modify, they would cut and edit it,
Ah,
to try to show the worst of it.
of
And I was
course.
like, well, I watched the whole speech and I found it terrible. I found it repugnant. So I'm sure your listeners would have found the whole speech repugnant. However, what I noticed is that occasionally Trump will say something because he's smart enough to build up sympathy in his crowd. And I thought to myself, those are the things that are edited out usually.
Sure.
And so I thought, like, how dumb do you think your viewers are?
Oh,
If you
they
are literally the source of the truth and information, then your viewers should be very discerning and be able to look past it and be like me and see, like, wow, is he ever manipulative instead of feeling
but
sympathy
no,
for
they
him?
don't.
Yeah.
They're not seeing, and we see that now very, very clearly that the viewers are not at all discriminating, and they will simply pick the news channel that gives them the bias they're looking
Yeah.
for, and they have it in spades. So, you can determine politically who's on which
Mm.
channel. You can determine if let's go to anti-Semitism again. You know where the anti-Semites are, and you know where they are less likely to be. And it's really clear, and they get the information they're looking for to stoke their fire so they
Yeah.
can keep running with it. There's no thought going on here. There's no critical thinking, none at all. There's all kinds of, well, I believe this because yada yada, excuses and stuff, but will they actually look to see if what they're saying is true? No, they won't. And that goes for any of the news stations that we
Mm.
have. And people will literally decide these people are cancelled, that person's cancelled. And just because somebody holds an opinion that you
Mm.
don't hold, and I'm thinking of the cancel culture conversation,
Right.
to bring it forward, what it was the topic was J.K. Rowling
Mm.
and her stance on trans.
Right.
Okay. I was defending her right to
Mm.
say what she wanted to say
Right.
because she's not in a position to affect anybody's life.
Right.
She wasn't stirring up hate. She was responding to a question she was asked, and that was her response. But she
Mm.
wasn't holding a political platform. She wasn't trying to get people to behave in a way that was detrimental to trans people,
Right.
right? She
Mm.
was an author stating her opinion. She didn't advocate violence in any way, shape, or form. I know, I checked into it. She didn't advocate for anything. She simply answered the question. Now, do I agree with what she said? No, but I don't have to,
Right.
right? And no, I'm not trans. So yes, people who told me off about that, you don't know what it's like, da da da. Hey, dude, I got my own issues going on right now with people wishing harm. So, don't
Yeah.
don't think yourself exclusive here. But the point is, it's not the same thing. This is an author expressing her opinion in response to a question. So if you don't like it, you can carry on about your life and nobody's threatening you, right? So there's no need to cancel anybody here. You could, I don't know, maybe have a discussion,
Mm.
maybe pose a counter, like have a dialogue. This is not a end sum
Yeah.
of
Zero
what's going
sum.
on
Yeah.
here.
Zero sum. Yeah. If one
Yeah,
person gets one, then no one else gets the other. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they could have a conversation, but when you're talking about something like anti-Semitism, no, actually lives are at stake here, and hate is being
Mm.
perpetuated, and it is being deliberately fired up,
Mhm.
and people are going for that. And and this is fine. There's no cancel happening on this. So where are the priorities, and where are those moral right people who want to shut down J.K. Rowling, but you can globalize the Intifada and that's okay. Well, for the people, and if anybody is still listening to
Mm.
this and you don't know what globalize the Intifada means, it means to go and kill all Jews. Now, if you're thinking that's a good idea, um, then we know what you would have done in the 30s, and you would have
Yeah,
been right in the Nazi Party, right up there. So all the things they did are what you're advocating now. And
yeah.
really,
It's
and yet
interesting how
this
many
is
some
this is
people.
acceptable,
Yeah,
right?
it's
In so
interesting
many
how many
places.
people I would call
Nothing.
brown shirts sometimes. Just think, listen to them talk and how they respond to things. I'm like, I don't know for sure they'd be out killing people, but I know that the policies would be allowed to creep in under them as voters and stuff during that time.
Well, it's the same thing. They would allow it. So
Yeah,
it's essentially the same thing. But J.K. Rowling saying, I think women are women and men are men, and that's an end to the conversation as far as she's concerned. Okay, there
yeah,
are many people who feel that way, and I don't know that that's enough to warrant canceling that person's existence because you don't agree with them. They're not actually threatening anybody.
no,
That's the thing. It's a very different um, situation. And so people get to feel morally superior, and they try and, let's burn all the Harry Potter books.
mm,
Well, okay, you want to burn the wizard books?
yeah.
Fine, you already bought them, so she's all right.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's
It's not going to affect her, but maybe your kid would have really loved reading if they'd had the
mm,
opportunity to read Harry Potter. Maybe your local library would have benefited from it, and she doesn't get any money. Like, there's so many different ways to look
yeah,
at that, but
there is.
canceling, I don't think anybody has the right to do that. And just no. And we're in a country that really prides itself on free speech, which I find utterly fascinating. Like,
Yeah,
free speech for whom? And on what subjects? Because you can only be freely speaking about things that are approved. So we have a veneer over here of, the freedoms and the rights and yada yada. Only certain people have them, and only on certain topics.
that's the it's that I don't even know how far to go into that one. I know I can say as a French Canadian, I don't hear about it as much, but every once in a while in the darker corners of the Canadian internet, you always hear people raise their heads that French Canadians aren't Canadians and they
Oh,
should just
really?
get rid of, yeah, and there should be no French and that. And yeah, and you would think, right? There's been a lot of French prime ministers
Yeah.
and people in power. So you would think it wouldn't be a thing anymore, which is why, oddly enough, I say this before. It's not that French Canadians are the most oppressed people in the world. There were periods in history where it sucked, you know? Now it's more just lingering in the shadows, kind of where every once in a while someone will come up and say something. But like I said, French Canadians in Canada are a good group to be at mediators between groups who feel oppressed and groups who do the oppressing because French Canadians as a culture have been both. And so they should. So it pisses other French Canadians piss me off when they don't adapt that behavior. But I mean, they're free to do what they want, but I just think it's strange to not be able to take that mindset, especially knowing your own culture's history. Where the hell's my point? But the, but you kind of no, what the hell was I talking about now? Now
Well,
that I
first
got
of
it.
all, I can say you're assuming they know their history.
Yeah, well, that's the big one, right? Like I've been around French Canadians who hate that they're French, self-hating. So
Mhm.
weird. But for me, it gives me an understanding when someone is in an oppressive group and they talk about, like, I know those behaviors because I've engaged in them. It's what someone in a minority position will do when they're faced with the majority. They'll try to find other people like them, get some sense of comfort. They'll be like, I can't remember which one of the means, the dopamine or the serotonin or whatever that kicks in when you find something familiar to yourself, kicks in. I know that whole thing of speaking differently. when you're in the larger majority group. Like I understand those things. So to me, as someone in that position, I can view the both sides, not from the extremes, but at least from someone who's had a taste of each side.
Right.
So like I'm pretty lucky to be where there's a lot of French Canadians, and I've had like I was able to go to French school and keep that part of the culture, my culture, French Canadian culture up. But like it's easy to lose once you get out of school, once you lose those fundamental things, because greater society in Canada couldn't care less. Even though in the Constitution it's supposed to be 100% French services on a federal level, like it's 63% available, and the government pats itself on the back all the time, even though the country's like over, it's close to 200 years old, and it's like, and you still don't have everything that you promised done.
See, that's an issue that faces so many countries,
But that's what I mean. It's
including this one, because they're busy looking out at other people and saying how other people should be living and not looking at themselves.
yeah,
And I think that is where we're at as a society. Now, maybe we've always been there and we just didn't have it so obviously because, now you have
yeah,
internet. But it's typical that, there's nothing to see here, but I'm watching you and you're doing it wrong. You need to be like us. And one of the experiences I had quite early on in my 20s was when I went to Bangladesh, for example. And
yeah,
boy, they're in a hot mess right now. But anyway, I went to Bangladesh. And one of the things I learned there very quickly was bringing what I understood to be ethical,
mhm,
moral values from the West to a place like Bangladesh was wildly inappropriate because that's not how it works there. That's not how the society's set up. That's not how the culture's set up. And so I literally had a Bangladeshi person explaining it to me and saying, so you need to leave that stuff at the airport, send it back home or go with it because that's not how it works here. And if you keep looking for things to be the way you understand them to be, it isn't going to go well for
yeah,
you because that's not the reality. I went for 6 months and stayed for 3 years.
mhm,
And I really had to change my perspective to work with what was the reality there.
yeah,
And yet, how often do we do that? We just look at other people and say, well,
yes,
according to my standards, this needs to look that way. And now what people are doing, and cancel culture again.
yeah,
But that now what people are doing is they're looking at old movies, TV shows, this
mhm,
kind of thing, basing what the content on what would be acceptable now and canceling things. Like,
yes,
what the hell? Canceling Golden Girls, for example.
mm,
Seriously? You cannot cancel the Golden Girls. This is ridiculous. But the stuff that they said, the stuff that they did was actually groundbreaking when it was
yeah.
out there. And if you listen to the content, they're not promoting negative things. They're not. They're highlighting them. This is a very different thing.
It's interesting that you bring up Golden Girls because it made me think of something. Because my sister-in-law loves Golden Girls, so a lot of times
Of
they'll get
course, they're
Golden
awesome.
Girls. And I remember, so there is famously her episode where her brother's gay, and
Right.
they go through the whole episode, and and Blanche finally comes to terms with it. But what I find funny is before that episode, there were a lot of jokes about like where if a guy was gay, either would be Sophia or Blanche would make the comment of, oh, like little light in the loafers, or with a very derogatory tone. So if you don't see the whole series and you don't see the progression of the characters, because Sophia went from that, but then when her son was a cross-dresser, she, whatever his name was, Phil or whatever, she changed her attitude. Blanche changed her attitude when she realized her brother, when she got to actually, like I don't think Rose and Dorothy were, the fact that I know the names of the characters still after all these years, but still how many times I've seen it. But the thing is, yes, there's a big, I find, I'll put it this way, as someone who's Gen X, I find the world odd right now. With the not because it's new and it's different, but it's just growing up. The whole thing was you include people, and if someone does something different from you, that's fine. That's their way of doing things. And the same thing came down to your masculinity or your femininity. If someone was a tomboy, she's still a girl. whatever. That's her way of being a girl. If a guy, was a bit more feminine, well, that's his way of being a guy, and you just let that be the thing.
Uh-huh.
That's their thing. So now when someone says, "Oh, you're a tomboy, therefore either you're a lesbian or you're trans or you're this gender now," instead of, I'm like, why all these distinctions? Why these separations when we were, at least my generation was conditioned to accept, yeah, that's who they are. Let them be who they are.
And it really doesn't mean anything about the person.
Right.
No, I did an entire course on the I forget the title of it now, but it was basically working with people who are LGBTQ plus
Right.
in a therapy environment
Mm-hmm.
because of my background. So
Right.
it was a 6 week course that I did to get more understanding of how to show up so that somebody would feel they were in a safe space. And one of the most telling things I got from this amazing professor, like I loved what she was doing. Um, but one of the things I got was, okay, so I want to show you all the different alphabet combinations that
Mm-hmm.
are possible right now. And we had screen after screen after screen. And like, I think we were on fourth or fifth screen, and she just burst out laughing and said, yeah, that was the reaction I was expecting from everybody. Now, do you want to know how to handle this? And we're all sort of jaw dropping, going, uh-huh, because it was intimidating,
Yeah.
right? And she said, so somebody comes to your office and it's a new client, you're going to work with them for the first time. You ask them, how would you like to be identified?
Mm-hmm.
And if they give you an acronym that you're unfamiliar with, you say, and what does that mean for you?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, that is basically this 6 week course in a summary.
Yeah.
We'll go into more details of experiences and stuff, but that's what
Yeah.
you need to take
Yeah.
away is ask the person how they would like you to address them and then use that. Because if I say to you, my name's Michaela, and you
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, I think I'm going to call you Sally.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really, I don't feel you look
Oh
like a
yeah.
Michaela. I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to call you Sally. I prefer that. It's like, well, it's not your freaking choice. I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you, this is my name. This is how I would like to be addressed. So, how is it different when it comes to pronouns? Like, now I confess, I don't always remember them, particularly if it's not visibly cued in for me. Like I can look at somebody
Yes.
who's very female presenting and say she quite easily.
Right.
Male presenting, I can say he quite easily. But when we're getting into, well, looks this way,
Mm-hmm.
says that way, then it takes more work for me to remember. I'm willing, I just might not remember every single time. But again, there's nothing to read into that. It's
Right.
just that's an adaptation that I'm undergoing, right? But the key really is just how would you like me to interact with you? You look male presenting. Are you
Mm-hmm.
he, him? Cool. Let's go with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need to be worried about what that means they're doing in the bedroom, how they dress, whether they wear makeup. Like, I don't care. And neither should you. It's not your problem. And we don't have to toxic cover anything
Mm-hmm.
either by yelling or saying it's wonderful or whatever. Like the body positivity movement is another one that just leapt to mind. You might think that's great. I don't. I'm not a fan. And the reason I'm not a fan is because it's too extreme in the whole, hey, I'm 400 pounds and I look gorgeous and you've got to love me the way I look. Okay, how's your health? Are your
Yeah.
joints holding up? Like, what got you to 400 pounds? Because that is not a place that your
Yeah.
body typically wants to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you there? How is it affecting your life? How is it impacting what you can and can't do? Let's look at that. Body positivity to me is accept where you're at right now and then figure out what you're going to do to get to a place that's more functional for you. It's
Yeah.
not like fat shaming is the other extreme,
Mm-hmm.
but like going all the way to the I'm 400 pounds and gorgeous kind of deal is as unhelpful. It's just as bad, right? It's a trap again. People are stuck in this, well, I'm huge and gorgeous and you're going to have to deal with it. Like, what's that energy? What does that mean?
There's a I think there's pretty much a observation slash joke going around that everyone says Lizzo's attractive until you tell them they look like Lizzo.
There you go. You see, that's wow.
Yeah,
And the thing is, the way I look at somebody like Lizzo or Lizzo, and actually I haven't heard her sing, I don't think, but I know who
she's
the person
talented. She's very talented.
Cool. So I know who the person is, and she's on stage, and she's a model for a whole lot of people,
Hmm.
and this is fantastic. But she shouldn't have to stay a particular size in order to be that way. If she changes her size, that shouldn't be an issue. The question really is she talented? Because I
Well,
would rather
Adele,
listen to someone who can sing than somebody who has to be auto-tuned in
yeah,
order to put something presentable out there.
yeah,
So we need a middle ground there where there's acceptance that this is the size you are and it doesn't
yeah,
stop you from getting up on stage, and acknowledgement that maybe if you choose to acknowledge it, that maybe you need to do something to get into a healthier place because the body is not made to sustain that
yeah,
for a prolonged length of time. It's simply the case. But self-acceptance is the first
yeah,
step before you can do anything from there anyway. So I agree with that, but I don't agree with the body positivity stuff where, this is wonderful and I'm going to stay where I am.
yeah.
And everybody has to tell you how amazing you are, like you said, until somebody says you look like that person. And
Yeah.
then,
And then,
what?
but
So what's that?
I'm going to tell you a secret to all this stuff for me.
Go for it.
Whether I agree or disagree with any extreme discussion about health or sex and gender or politics, what I find is that usually we come to these extremes because people hid the truth in a sense, be it culturally, be it
Mhm.
like practically by hiding data. Because, like, for example, being overweight, some of the discussion is listen, we're not all, yes, you are, once you're a certain amount of overweight, you're unhealthy. But what you learn is that, like, how many 300-pound dancers have you seen do a split?
Right.
And then the fact that there are 300-pound dancers, because dancing takes a bit of stamina, to do for a prolonged period of time. So on the one hand, you hear, well, if you're overweight, you have no stamina and all this stuff. But then you watch a very overweight 300-pound dancer do a
Mhm.
dance and they're quite graceful. It's like, okay, so there's something going on here about how the body works that we don't understand, you know, in a
There's
sense.
yeah, there's a lot, and absolutely that's why I was using an extreme number,
Mhm.
400 pounds, right?
Right.
Because there's a lot of range between
Yes. If it
100
comes to the point
pounds.
where your body can't even cope with the weight just to
Right.
move yourself.
And I had a client who was the least cooperative client ever and very resistant and very difficult to get moving forward. She was 375 pounds, had all kinds of health issues, and her joints were falling apart.
Right.
Literally, she had like half a dozen surgeries in the space of 2 months. I was worried for the amount of anesthetic that was
Right.
going on here. This is harsh on anybody's body. And she would not be in that position if she wasn't carrying as much weight as she's carrying. My concern was the reasons for the weight, which are often very psychological. There's a lot of, pain that gets layered over with overeating and what have you. But how to get her to move from there? There's no like judgment on this means this about you and this means that
Mhm.
about you. I'm straight up looking at the medical stuff and saying, holy cow, we need to do something. Otherwise, your longevity is about 3 years.
Mhm.
So, we need to do something. But the problem is there's still all those stereotypes. Like I
Mhm.
did a podcast episode before on the topic of laziness. And
Yes.
my point to laziness is it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as laziness. You are taking rest,
Mhm.
or you are avoiding doing something because you don't want to, or you don't feel capable, whatever. It's not laziness. That is a term that was coined, I think, when slaves um, first became a big part of life. Everybody has a slave, and
Yeah.
one of the control mechanisms you would use is the word laziness. But it
Mhm.
wasn't a thing. I think Puritans actually started it. They were the ones that came up with the word laziness. It wasn't a thing before then. I argue it's still not a thing,
Right.
but it's a derogatory term that we use to associate certain people with. And if somebody is large, you typically hear fat and lazy, right? Like it's
Yeah.
almost running into one word.
Mm,
And judgmental much?
mm,
So from that, we get this whole, well, that's not me, so I'm going to go all the way to this extreme of body positivity and
right.
Nina, Nina, here I am
Yeah.
perfect. And it's just none of it is okay. That's the thing. The whole spectrum of judgment is a problem.
Right.
Somebody's size does not determine their worth. And I mean that in every way, shape, and
Mm,
form. Quite literally, if you're slim, it doesn't mean you're an amazing person. If
right.
you're large, it doesn't mean you're an amazing person. You can be, you think of Israel, and I can't say his surname, but the Hawaiian guy who recorded Somewhere Over the
Oh
Rainbow
yeah,
at
yeah.
3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, the guy was absolutely giant and it killed
Yep.
him.
Hmm.
Okay, we can say that his health condition from being his size killed him, but what a fantastic talent. What
Yeah.
a beautiful voice, what a heart. And what a
Yeah.
determination to share that with people by going and recording it at 3 o'clock in the morning. But he was hiding himself because he didn't want to be
Mm,
seen, right? So there's so much judgment and stuff there. That didn't actually reduce his worth, but he felt it did.
right. And that's yeah. That's the thing. Like, so that's why when we have these discussions, and even like, like the more I learned about the mechanics of the body, flexibility isn't about being thin. Flexibility is about how you use your muscles and your body's confidence in your muscles to do things. And
Right?
it's the same thing when the whole our trans women, our trans men, it brought up a whole discussion about, well, what is, even biologically, what does it mean biologically to be a male or a female? All these things I hadn't thought about before. And and so me, when there's these things come up, I grow from them. I become
Right.
an doesn't mean necessarily that I fall under any of the other camps or go to their opinions, just the all the new wealth of things I learned. Like even about being trans, one of the things I learned was, not just body dysmorphia, but actually phantom limb syndrome, where
Right.
your brain is looking for something that's not there, and it gives you a pain.
That's
Like,
interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah, well, that's something I've heard in the last 3 months.
I
But
know
I thought,
about
well,
phantom limb syndrome. I didn't
yeah,
realize that it would apply there.
yeah, well, that threw me off too, because it's the way it was given to me was the if you're a trans woman, part of why you like, because there's more than one reason, right? There's, as I like to say, there's many a slip betwixt a cup and a lip. Not my original saying, but things can go
Right.
wrong to lead. We start off essentially female, and then we change the males get a when you have the Y chromosome, it's to indicate your body to make changes. But if you don't get enough testosterone, you don't make the change. So that leaves you with a whole host of issues that can come up. But
Right.
if your brain's looking for ovaries and you have testicles, you know, now you're in a place, because phantom, like, I'll put it like this: like, I knew people with phantom limb syndrome, and it's annoying. Even me, like, I have a club foot, but my foot was straightened,
Mhm.
not corrected, straightened, because it's important, because there's a certain lack of flexibility that comes with the straightening. But
Right.
if I'm not looking at my foot and I'm in a relaxed position, my brain thinks it's facing the opposite, its original position.
Yep.
So instead of being sitting like this, it thinks my foot's like this, and I have to look down
Right.
and make sure. Like, I'm like, wow, like, is it twisting back? And it's like, oh no, it's still in the place it was. It just feels like it's here.
Hmm.
So that's like, it doesn't drive me nuts, but it's like, but every once in a while I check, you know.
Right.
So if your brain thinks you have an internal organ that's supposed to be there and it's not, and
Hmm.
there's nothing you can
That's
do about it.
interesting. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to read up on that. That's interesting.
So whether or not that's actually true, it is something to think about when you come to
Hmm.
think about dysmorphia. It's like, it's not just it's not a fetish. It's not like being gay. It's not a choice. It's something is going on. There's a mechanism causing you to perceive your reality the way it is. Like I
Hmm.
said, if I just follow my body, as far as it's concerned, my foot is faced this way and not this way.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
No,
and it
it's
doesn't bug me because I can look down and see it and go, oh yeah, and I know all the steps, I had surgeries to straighten it out, so I know why it's not there. And it's not like it doesn't weigh heavily on me. But if you have like, if your brain doesn't register your sexual organs as they are and is looking for another kind.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that.
Yeah.
This is a new perspective for me. I
Yeah.
haven't heard that before, but I am aware of the phantom limb thing.
So I like to engage in these conversations, even if I don't, whether I disagree or whether I agree, I like to engage in it because sometimes something new like this pops up. And then I'm
Right.
like, wow, like this is really something I didn't know.
And that is
You can learn.
exactly
Yeah.
that speaks exactly to what I was saying about you don't stay static. There's either growth or atrophy.
Mhm.
And when people use toxic positivity or toxic toxicity,
Yeah.
yelling and what have you,
Yeah.
whatever the shutdown mechanism that's your flavor of choice, then, that stops growth. That stops that conversation where you might learn something, I might learn something, we might both learn something. And who knows, right? You'll never know if you don't have that
Yeah.
conversation. But being okay with not being okay is something that I think we all need to work on. And I mean, we all, including me, need to work on that some more because we grow up with a whole lot of no, don't feel sad. No, you can't be angry. No, you can't do that. And hey, we're just going to tell you how wonderful everything is. And, you know, it's a funny thing, but when I walk into a place that has a receptionist, for
Mm.
example, there are still some of those places around,
Yeah.
and there's a sign right on there on the desk that says, "Don't worry, we're all crazy here."
Yeah.
Seen that one? I
Yeah.
usually turn around and leave as soon as possible because what I know I'm walking into is probably the most boring situation you could ever imagine because people only put that stuff out there when they're really not at all crazy. In fact, they don't have an imagination whatsoever. And you know that you're going to be shut down in that environment
Mm.
because we're all crazy here means do not step out of line. Like I have learned that one over the years.
Mm.
So it's one of those, there's toxic positivity and a sign for you right
Mm.
there,
Yeah.
right? It's just and when you see, oh, this company's values are, and then they have integrity,
Yeah.
honesty, what are the other billboard ones, stuff like that
Family
anyway.
values, we care about the whole nine
Yeah, you
yards.
you
I've been
see
in tech
that
support,
stuff?
I've been in sales, I've been in, I'm like,
You see
wow.
that stuff on the wall, turn around and leave because this
Mm.
is not going to be what's happening in reality. They put that up so that everybody says, oh, yes, those are our values. And actually, no, those aren't the values at all. The values are how much money can we make today? Those
Yeah.
are the values. So it's this thing, it appears in more places than just verbally,
Yeah.
right? There's the signs we choose, there's the decor around us, there's
Yeah.
the people we hang out with. Like there's so many areas where that sort of facade gets reinforced. And it's just like, why are we doing this again? And typically the more reinforcement you need, the less secure you are in where you're at, what you're doing. Like, do you really know what you're doing? Think of the micromanagers in life.
Mm.
People who watch your every move and correct everything. They're typically the people who have been promoted beyond their capacity. So
Yes.
they're in a position of authority when they don't actually have what it takes to do that job.
Mm.
I've come across that I don't know how many times as well. And you see it every time. When somebody's micromanaging, it means they don't feel that they have control.
Yeah, it's weird. I have a work related experience that's like that
Bet you
where
do.
yeah, where people have to, oh, certain things were done, so now we have to talk about it, even if this is a formality. And I remember I was on a job because I made an error on my first day of work, and this was like
No.
2 months later, and my manager goes, well, on this day you made this mistake, and I was like, the look on my face must have been telling, because, but I was like, okay, so I have a question. Did I repeat this mistake? They're like, no. I'm like, why are we having this meeting? I made a mistake on my first day here, and a mistake I've never repeated. Why do we need to discuss this?
I can't even imagine why they registered the fact you'd made a mistake on day one. Like
Yeah,
for anybody, like you can't see our faces right now, but my, oh no, you didn't was very sarcastic because yeah, that's kind of what the first day is all about, really, is
yeah,
figuring stuff out. Hopefully, if they've given you enough equipment to do that with.
yeah.
But
So yeah, so the discussion went. I basically said, so it was on my first day, and I've never made the mistake again. So is it possible that I already corrected the mistake? And they're like, yeah. I'm going, okay, so why did you pull me off the floor to come and talk to me about this when this was already dealt with? Like
and how long did you have that job for?
that job I had for about 3 to 4 months because I could
Right.
not stand the place.
And
That
and
that,
that's
that meeting was actually part start of the
See,
the
that
quitting
was why I
process.
asked that was why I asked the question because
Yeah,
it's not an environment that anybody can thrive in. And
yeah,
if you have the cojones to ask the questions
mm,
that you asked, then that marks you right away for a very short duration.
yeah.
Because it's out of line with people asking questions and
It-
you know, here's something else that just comes to mind too when it comes to questions and authority and stuff like that.
mm,
When a person has autism, they will typically ask a great many questions when you ask them to do
mm,
something. And I'm thinking adults now in the workplace. They will ask a lot of questions, and the questions will be from all sorts of angles. And the reason for this, for anybody listening who's interested, is often typically because the person with autism needs to have a full understanding of what's being asked and why, so that they know how to respond to what's
yeah,
being asked. There's no um, lack of intelligence there. This is a need for a complete picture.
yeah,
They want detail. They want to know why. It's not enough for you to say, go do this thing. That's insufficient information to get a decent job. It's
yeah,
like, why do you want me to do that? Now, let's go to nutrition for a moment. If you turn around to me and said, I want you to eat avocado every day,
mm,
I am immediately going to say, why? What's the benefit of doing that? And isn't there a problem if I have it every day? Like, how
mm,
much should I have every day?
yeah,
How do I eat it? Should it be on toast? Like, do I put it in a smoothie?
yeah.
How do you want me to do it? What do you mean avocado every day? What happens when it's not in season? Like I have a lot of questions about that,
Yes,
right? It's not just going to be do this thing and then I go do it. That's a bit mindless. And if there's one thing a person with autism isn't, it's mindless. They have
right.
a lot going on, and there's a lot of focus and there's a lot of attention to detail. So when a person with autism is asking you questions, it's because they want detail. There's
Mm,
nothing wrong there. That's actually a really good thing. So, yeah, I just want to throw that one out there because, I often like to bring in kids and autism because these are two underrepresented populations
mm,
who are hugely important and very misunderstood.
yeah. Well, I will say that even if not a continuous listener, at least some of the audience does have autism. So it's
And
actually,
and you know what? That's cool. We need people with autism because that is where our innovation comes from. People with that kind of brain wiring. And don't mistake this. There's no disease. It's called a disorder. I would like to change that
mm,
name. It's not a disorder. It is a difference.
yeah,
And when people understand that there is a difference in wiring, that's key. Because if we all think the same, we're going to get the same damn results over and over again. We need people who are wired differently to think differently, to come up with new things that
mm,
work for our world right now. Those are the people with autism, by and large. If you look at some of the huge innovations that have happened, remarkable people, what do they have in common? Oh, well, yeah, a little bit of Asperger's, like that's being a little bit pregnant, but there you go.
yeah,
It's this is the kind of thing that comes up. So yeah, people with autism are generally not reaching their potential because they're not allowed to. And I have a big problem with that. It bothers me a lot.
Yeah. Well,
A lot,
that's
lot,
kind of
lot.
my crusade with people with the ADHD. I'm like the when I was working for a social workplace, I used to read through the library.
Hmm.
And one of the books I read was about ADHD, and it left me with the conclusion of people with ADHD aren't meant for peaceful, quiet environments. They're meant for high stress environments. Their memory kicks in, they have great memory of areas, they're calm, they handle the situation, they know how to behave. Everything that you would say a kid with ADHD doesn't have when you see them in a classroom.
Well, the classroom honestly isn't a good environment for anybody.
Right.
It's not for our species right now, for sure. And it's absolutely kids en masse are velociraptors.
Right.
Like seriously, vicious little sods when they're en masse. They really are. Look at the bullying that goes on in schools
Yeah.
and what have you, and everybody I know has been bullied. It seems to me, and certainly I was. Kids are velociraptors,
They are.
but we need a different environment. I used to teach Montessori
Mm.
for a while, and you do not get velociraptors in Montessori. You might get the odd one that kind of tends a little bit that way. They don't stay doing that for very long because it's not an environment where that is encouraged or even facilitated. Like it just isn't a thing. So in Montessori, because there's so much attention on the child and giving the child what they need, it just doesn't become a thing. But when you put them in an unnatural environment, which is typical schools, and have these kids sitting down and listening all day, that's not productive for anybody. Like,
Right.
nobody does well with that. And bring in the misunderstandings that people have of somebody with autism or ADHD
Mm.
or any of the things
Mm.
really, dyslexia, dyscalculia, pick a thing. You bring in that lack of understanding that so many teachers have. And what you've now got is a hostile environment. And you've already got anxiety going on because you know that you're not coming across the same way as everybody else, and you
Yeah.
don't get what seems to be the in joke, right?
Mm.
You don't get the inside story because you're not in it.
Right.
That's a very tough place to be. And the school environment is downright toxic for this. It's awful. Like, wow. I I don't even know how we still have these same school systems going because they're so bad for so many people. Very few people actually thrive in school. What you hear is if they go to college,
Mhm.
that was where school started to be fun, was in
Yeah.
college. And there's a lot more self-directed learning there.
Yes.
There's a lot more autonomy there, and there's a place where you can ask your teacher questions.
You
That's
know,
a huge difference.
yes. And it makes me, well, early on as a kid, what I learned very quickly, you know, when you when you're in possession of dyslexia, at least like I was. I remember I was never told I had it. I was just brought in. They said do these exercises, it'll help you go. Okay, fine. But what I learned is so like, there'd be people in class going to, taking, especially for gifted kids back then when gifted meant you had, you were smarter and stuff. And I'm like, I have conversations with these people all the time. These people, wish they were as smart as me, blah, 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 the whole 9 years. And I'm like, and I'm hitting the remedial classes because they can't read properly, but yet everything else, and they're going. So I started watching what they were doing, but I would see them. They would get up and they'd ask the teacher questions while we were doing work, and they would be more actively involved. Whereas I was like, wow, they just treat me like I'm an idiot, so I'm just going to sit here and do whatever and not worry about it.
Mhm.
But I noticed that they ask questions, and it seems to me, and then as I grew up, that was the thing. If you're smart, you ask questions. So it always seemed to me that every time there's a study and it says, oh, like grief, you need at least a week before you can even become productive again. And, or teenagers don't really start learning till like 10 in the morning,
Mhm.
you know, and yet, oh, now school starts at 7:30. I'm like, well, it used to start at 9. Why is it 7:30 when we've learned that it's 10 o'clock when they start learning? So I'm like, as you probably heard online by now, is the system isn't broken. It's working as it's intended to work.
Oh, that's so damning.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, okay. That's
because we have all this research, we have all this understanding that what we're doing now isn't working. But whenever this research comes out, we double down on the thing that's not working instead of the
yeah,
thing that would work.
100%. That is what's going on. And it's so sad because we are squashing so much potential. And I was doing a podcast with a teacher
Mm,
a little bit ago, and she said something that I kind of picked up on. And it was, I ask my students, who's got any questions?
right.
She said, none of them ever have any questions. So I said, okay, I have a little thing for you to try next time you're in the classroom. Try saying to the teacher, but teacher, try saying to your students, what questions do you have? The pre-frame is hugely different.
Yes.
Do you have any questions is not really inviting.
Mm,
It's an invitation, but it's kind of a sterile invitation.
yeah.
You don't really want an answer to that, right? Whereas if you say, what questions do you have?
Mm,
That suggests that you expect questions.
yes.
And she tried it and she said, wow, I had 5 kids ask me questions right away. Okay, there you go. That's the difference. Like, she didn't mean to not have them ask her questions.
Right.
She just didn't realize how her language was affecting their response. This is part of the whole behavior analysis piece, right?
Yeah.
That's something that I can bring in and say, well, okay, tweak this, just change these words around a little bit, and you'll have a whole different experience.
Yeah. Well, we expect smart people to have answers, though, to have to ask questions, right? They just magically know everything. And it's
Yeah,
repeated in media, right? Sherlock Holmes. I remember, I think I was in my 20s and I was watching a Sherlock Holmes episode, but the older ones with what's it, Jeremy, I can't remember his last name. The actor who played
Jeremy
Sherlock Holmes.
Irons.
No, it wasn't Jeremy Irons. It was a British actor, but uh, and he discovered, one of the reasons he knew the person was engaging in the crime is because he used a bicycle, and this particular bicycle only used certain type of tire, and therefore, and I'm thinking like, okay, so the guy who's the killer is also a handyman. So I'm
Uh-huh.
thinking, one, he could have completely did something and jerry-rigged a different tire because he didn't have access to always getting a new tire. So your presumption, you know, is a little off because he doesn't necessarily, as a person who has to take care of things, sometimes he has to be creative and make changes. So you can't just blindly state that because that tire goes with that bike that's necessarily why that happened, because he could have had something else, or someone else could have in that similar position could have just could have modified their thing. And and it's the same thing. I think the one with Benedict Cumberbatch too, to make them sound smart, or even you see it in movies now, the person will just automatically make an assumption, oh, you have a cut on your right cheek, therefore you were outside and there was wind and it must have been grass because the grass cut your face. And it's like, uh-huh, all that
That
from
is
one
the case.
observation.
That is a case
That's
of
the
logic.
opposite of what smart people do.
It's a case of logic
Yeah,
where, one of the things I got from my husband, he likes to say this is logic is a great way of going wrong with confidence.
yeah,
And I love that. I think that's just that's really good. Like, you can logic your way in and out of anything.
mm,
But I've said it before, but human beings are reasoning creatures, not reasonable. It's a
yes,
big difference. You can
yeah,
reason your way in and out of anything, and we do it all the time. Like, we're always justifying to ourselves what we do, because who's ever going to sit there and say, I'm not a very good person?
mm,
Like, typically we don't do that because that's not a survival thing. That's not how we think. It's the person thinking that way has depression, right?
mm,
They have something that they need help with.
yes,
It's not something that we look for. So to expect someone to look at what they've done and say, "Oh, that wasn't very good." Um, you might be able to if you're able to accept responsibility for fixing things, but it depends on what it is.
yeah,
And we're not all nice all the time.
mhm,
Nobody is. But we'd like to think so, right? And we're going to reason our way into that
we
at
can.
any given point.
Yeah. It's funny, on the point of logic, one of the things because it comes up. A lot of my niece and nephews, they're smart, high IQs, whatever. And so sometimes this kind of comes up, well, that's not logical. And I'm like, well, hold on. I'm going to tell you something about logic you may not understand. Logic is not a fixed thing. You need to look at what was your reasoning for doing something. Because if your reasoning for doing something was to bring harm, then that behavior is logical. But if you're trying to help someone, then that logic makes no sense whatsoever because it's what you're trying to do that makes the logic. So you have to have an agreed upon assumption to start with for something to be logical in the first place.
Interesting.
Like you can apply the tools of logic, but for an act to be logical or not logical, you have to have an agreed foundation of what the goal was meant to be.
See, and those scientists are saying we don't need philosophy.
Yes.
Honestly, I think they're
But
missing the mark there. Honestly.
I got this way though from watching the original Star Trek. So Spock would say that's not logical, and I'm like thinking, as a kid, at some point, I went, "No, that's completely logical. Look what you're trying to do. Why would that not be logical?"
Oh, that's funny.
Well,
Yeah, I
because right,
think.
the Vulcans don't use emotion, so therefore anything that has an emotional motivation to it, therefore can't be logical. And I'm like, well, no, because if you look at the steps they took based on their emotions, that made sense. That was logical.
Oh, bet you
What they're
drove
trying to
your
accomplish.
teachers nuts, didn't you?
I did. I did.
Of course you did. Yes, I can tell.
Yeah.
But I question that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, in high school, I was bad. I was rough. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Even to the other students, though, it was brutal. I
Yeah.
often ask people, like what people I went to high school with, I'm always like, how did you guys put up with me? One, half the people found it entertaining because it wasn't directed at them, so they were fine with it and they didn't have to do anything.
Right.
But some people were like, no, actually, we were curious about those things too. So when you asked, we didn't have to.
Right. Yeah.
I unloaded all the responsibility of learning off of them and onto myself because I'd asked the questions because I wanted to know.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes that's going to be the person that does the challenging and what have you as well, simply because you need to know where that's coming from or where it's going or, who the hell died and made you God
Yeah.
kind of thing, which is one of my irreverent questions. But, that person with the cancel culture, definitely, if that's not a God complex, I'm not quite sure what is.
Well, even from that, I always think about people who want to do cancel culture, like especially want to silence other people. And someone else has brought it up, but I always thought about it for years. And it's like how do you know the people who mean you harm if you don't hear them speak or don't let them reveal who they are?
Right. And that is actually a valid, I believe it's valid, argument for the political situation in the
Like
US over
just
the last few
strategically,
years.
it makes sense to let your opponent speak, so that you know what you're up against. Intel gathering,
It
basically.
does. It does. One of the things that the 2020 election did was it really, not that one, this 2016 actually, that highlighted a whole lot of things from the shadows, a whole lot of things that were unseen and untalked about.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff came up that people did not know existed, or they thought had been and had gone away. And then you discover that actually, no, all of this is alive and kicking, and you're about to get kicked by it. And that stuff was happening, and people were horrified and all the rest of it. Now, here's the thing though, pretending it wasn't there doesn't make it go away. And pretending it's not going to be there again or still doesn't make it go away. So we're still trying to sort of say, well, let's just not vote the same way and then we won't see the same things. Um, that hasn't been working. Like that's not the answer. The answer, I think, lies somewhere in understanding what's going on and why, and then figuring out a different way to deal with it. That's my thinking. But when people feel marginalized and they feel that they're not seen, not heard, not important, you have all the ingredients for trouble.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's always going to be the way. That's human being nature.
Mm.
There's nothing wrong about it because it is what it is. It's
Yeah.
just that's how it is.
And you know what? I'll make a prediction here. Not a real prediction, but I'll make a sort of an observation that if anyone's in politics, should pay attention to. So this episode will come out probably, I think, beginning of October, if I'm not mistaken. And I will argue that state-wise, the Democrats will lose a lot of, well, sorry, they can win, but they can't win as they are now. They can win if they quit marginalizing Trump supporters. Like, you know how I said at the beginning, right? Like, if you actually watch Trump supporters who are sympathetic towards Trump supporters and they actually have a real discussion, you see the pain, you see the alienation.
Uh-huh.
But right now, I have yet to see a Democratic platform. I've yet to hear a Democratic representative talk in a way that tells me they give a shit about these people
And
and
that
they're
was what blew everything up in 2016.
yeah.
That whole
Well, yes,
basket of deplorables thing was just
yes,
as I heard it, I was like, well, that was that then, because you can't do that. You can't say that and
right.
expect things to go well.
And if they do
From
it again,
that
yeah,
energy as well, it was another case of arrogance and, a whole lot of, well, obviously, of
yeah,
course I'm going to win, but it's like, well, no, that's nobody died and made you God either. So we need to get over this whole God complex thing of how unstoppable we all are, um, and be a little open to why is there a problem here? Where is the conflict coming from? And how can the people who are being marginalized feel like they belong? And do they? Like, do you actually feel like they don't belong? They're subhuman and
yeah,
worth less, etc. We have so many areas of society that are being sort of put in those categories. Like, is that really what you want to do?
yeah.
Really?
Well, like,
Energetically.
yeah. Well, that's the
How's that landing?
yeah. Well, that's
You
the
know?
thing. Like Hillary, I mean, sorry, Kamal, or however you're supposed to pronounce it. Apparently, her nieces came on and said, "This is how you're supposed to pronounce it." And I like when I heard that, I'm like, "Are they trying to lose? Like seriously?" And people go, "Oh, it's not serious." I'm going, "It's very serious to the people that they're alienating, and you want them to vote for her." I says, if she pulls a Hillary and does the deplorables thing, she's going to lose, just like Hillary did. But it's hers to lose because Trump does not have the same support he did back then.
Mhm.
So if the Democrats lose this time out, they've only themselves to blame because they alienated people. That's my prediction. If they lose, it's because they alienated people.
It would be really good to stop with the alienation,
Yeah.
actually, from all sides. If we could just like not, but the people in power, the divide and conquer thing has been working for centuries, and they're employing it, but it's so destructive. We're not talking about divide and conquer on the battlefield now. This is
Right.
divide and conquer in the society,
Yeah.
and keep everybody fighting with everybody else and everybody yelling at everybody else, and they're not actually looking at what you're doing and what you're getting away with, and the nonsense that's happening.
Yeah.
And you and I both have this thing about the food industry and what they're up to. Well, that's all money, politics, and not giving a damn about the people who are consuming this toxic stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's noticing. Why are they not noticing? Because they're too busy yelling at each other over whether Leah Thomas should swim or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is old news. We can move on now. Let's get into something about, oh, I don't know, how many toxins did they approve for our food this week?
Yeah.
Why don't we look at that? Why
Yeah.
is it when I watch my beloved football, because I really do enjoy football,
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently watching the pre-games, like seriously, they've just finished, but I was watching all the pre-games that I
Mm-hmm.
could get on the NFL network.
Right.
So you've got the location and it's all about football all the time.
Right.
When the advertisements show up, there's a couple of banking ones, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the same bank. And I'm not going to bother mentioning them because I don't want to give them any free
Yeah.
advertising. But then the other thing that shows up way more often, and I counted in one break, this thing went back to back 6 times. I was counting it.
Right.
And it was an advertisement for a particular brand of GLMP or whatever GLP-1, which is also known as Ozempic, the weight
Oh,
loss
yes, yes.
injection. This
Hmm.
was a different brand, but what they were showing, and I got to describe this because it really speaks to the manipulation. What they were showing was a woman of color who is, of course, large because she's doing the whole injection thing. And she is beautifully put together. Like her hair is perfect, her makeup, she's got these long fingernails and they're gorgeous. And she's dressed in this
Yeah,
softest pink and she looks amazing. And she's lounging literally on a sofa, holding one of those hairless cats. The
yeah,
cat has got a pearl collar on, right? Like a pearl necklace.
yeah,
And the whole tagline is, Heather or whatever her name is, likes things to be smooth. And she's stroking this hairless
yeah, yeah,
cat and a bald guy's head and all this
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing. So you're getting the reinforcement of smooth.
yeah.
And there's a little image of her sitting in what looks like a doctor's waiting room next to a guy with a large belly, and they are both looking, so you're getting the cramped vision,
Yeah,
right? And they're both looking incredibly bored.
mm,
And she kind of looks at her watch and sighs heavily. And then the voice tells you, you don't need to waste time sitting in a doctor's office. You can talk to a professional over the phone, and then we'll ship you your medication.
yeah,
And they show you this really animated enthusiastic woman, very slim, clearly, who's talking over the internet to this well put together would be client, right? And things are so effortless and so easy, and she just presses a button, and there you go. Now she's getting her meds,
yeah,
right? And they even show you her doing the injection while she's still lounging on the sofa and still got the damn cat. So the
yeah,
message you're getting is you can have a rich, opulent lifestyle. You can be the top of your game, and you don't have to do anything to lose weight. You don't even need to go to your doctor's office.
yeah,
You just contact us and we'll do everything for you. And then all you have to do is have this injection and you're golden. They don't talk about how 50% of your weight loss is going to be muscle loss.
yeah,
They don't talk about how expensive it's going to be. They don't talk about you being on it for life. They don't talk about the gastroparesis that many people are getting from this. I mean, having your intestine paralyzed is generally speaking not desirable,
no, it's not.
but it's a side effect of this medication. None of that comes up, right? And they will do this advertisement as I've just described it 6 times in a row, which is why I can describe it so well. And it's just, wow. How are they even? Nobody's looking at this. Nobody's paying attention to this. They're busy yelling about politics. Why don't we follow the money on this one and see who the hell is
Yeah,
saying that this is okay? Because if that's not brainwashing, I don't know what is.
yeah.
I
Like I
mean,
said, the
really?
advertisers, like I said, when I was, because I wanted to do a genuine comparison to Fox News and CNN, the same advertisers. So it doesn't matter to them what side you're on, they're going to sell you the product.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's utterly fascinating to me to see what's going on, but I'm also horrified because the subliminal messaging is getting to people. Like they're getting the message that you can have it all, and this is all you have to do. Like
Yeah.
your ticket is making a phone call to this particular place, and they even have like the name for their particular brand of this medication is 2 letters. That's all they have. Let's make it as simple as possible for the stupid public. That's
Yeah.
what they're doing,
Hmm.
and it's working, which is really frustrating. And so many people, this is going to be like the oxycodone pandemic, where
Yeah.
people and so many people end up addicted to this thing. If you have
It's
to be
fun.
on a medication for life, what would you call that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I looked out. I I had a hernia repair, and the normally the course of action for medication is Tylenol 3. And I was given Oxycontin for it.
Okay.
And I took like two or three, and I was done with it. I was like, I can't. And I had like a large bottle of
Oh,
pills.
well.
Like it was like, I'm like, do I need this much for it? Like, but I'm like, I took three, but I don't like being high, so I don't like that. I don't like that my brain is being blocked from interacting properly with my body. So
Uh-huh. Exactly.
so it bothered me. So I used, like I said, I barely touched it. I just used it when, when what passed for pain was a little bit, more than I wanted to deal with because of where the hernia was. But it was like, I was like, I'd rather have the pain than to deal with this fogginess. Even, I didn't even think at one point I had done it. I didn't think I was that bad. My brother was looking at me like, whoa. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm thinking I'm talking normally, but he's like, wow, you're gone. Like,
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Well,
not for me.
this is getting to that proportion, and they don't even have all the information yet on what the side effects are. But
Mm,
the information we have is scary as hell. Like if your health is already impacted to the point that you're prepared to inject yourself every week, and this is a slow injection. You have to take 20 seconds to do this injection. Now, that might not sound like a long time, but you try just poking a nail in your skin for 20 seconds and see how that feels. Like you're going to do that to yourself every week, and you're going to put this substance into your body that is going to mess with every system you have
mm,
so that you've got malabsorption going on, you've got muscle atrophy happening, and hello, people, the heart is a muscle, and
mm-hmm.
you're going to be doing all of this to yourself.
Yeah.
Mind blown. This should be saved for people like Israel, the guy we mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier who sang over the rainbow. He could have done with something like this because he needed desperate measures.
Yeah.
But for most people who are being put on this, the ones that I've seen, I'm looking at them and I'm like, give me 3 months. You will
Mm-hmm.
be on the path. Give me 3 months. Give me 2 months, you'll be on the path. Like, you don't need
Yeah.
the medications or any other products. But it's literally the people are being given the impression that they have no control over how this is going to go. And so you don't need, they're there, simpleton. You don't need to think about it. We'll just give
Yes.
you this medicate. We'll take care of you.
Mm,
Well, no, that's not what's happening. And I dread to think where this is going to end up. And they're
mm.
putting kids on it now.
Yeah, that's the
Kids as young as 12 are now getting it, even though it's not properly approved.
mm,
But and for the longest time, it was not approved for anybody under 17. They've dropped that age by 5 years. For what? If a kid is of the size where they need that kind of medication at the age of 12, then we need some family education.
yes.
We need some interventions here, and we need maybe healthier school food,
Mm,
and this kind of thing needs to get changed, right? So
yeah.
there's so much going on. We could do a podcast for like 6 hours, but we've already done three,
Pretty
so
much three, close to it, or very, very close
no,
to it.
we're on three.
We're on three, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I started putting my timer on a little bit later. I was like, oh crap, yeah, we're starting. Nice.
Yeah, we're a couple of minutes shy of 3 hours, so by the
Yeah,
time we wrap up, it'll be three.
yeah.
Which is funny because I've been joking all week. This is going to be a 3 hour
Yeah,
job because you
yeah.
picked toxic positivity, and I'm like, yep, there we go.
Well, all the stuff that like, and we hit all the stuff that branches out from it. So
I would say so. There's a lot. It is so pivotal to people's mental well-being as well. Like the depression. Okay, quick one.
yeah.
Depression is nothing wrong with your brain. There is a book called
Mm,
Lost Connections by Johann Hari, Johan, could be two N's, I can't remember. And then the surname is Hari, Johann Hari.
yeah.
Lost Connections. This is all about antidepressants, SSRIs, and so on. But it's also about the discovery that there is nothing chemically wrong with your brain when
Mm,
you have depression. I'm not talking postpartum depression here,
yeah.
that is a whole other thing.
Hmm.
But depression, generally speaking, is not a problem with your brain. It is a problem with your life
Yes.
and how you are responding to it. So medication will not fix that. You need to fix your life. So it's just like we're being sold with the Ozempic stuff right now and its ilk. That's not going to fix your life. It's going to medicate you.
Yes.
So I just want to point that one out. The depression is not a problem with your brain. Your brain's fine. They
Mm-hmm.
even did some tests on removing serotonin, like
All right.
serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Mm.
They did some tests on giving you serotonin, taking away serotonin, and guess what? The results showed there was no difference.
No, no. Hmm.
It's not your brain chemistry that's the problem, it's your life.
Yes.
And we
Well,
get more and more of that. And the more problems we have in our lives, the more medications come out.
yes. That's actually a whole other episode too. Just
Let's do it. Let's
medication
totally
free.
do that episode. I'm here for it.
All right. And you know what? 3 hours is the. I was gonna say I'm no Joe Rogan, so a 3 hour podcast is long enough for us. But I think we covered everything. We are. Did we cover everything? No, because you can write a book on this topic and you can do lectures for a long time on it. But I think we covered a lot of the foundations because we did hit what was important, right? If you do toxic positivity, you're not allowing people to actually get the help they need, which is one
Right.
of the reasons why, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the episode because of how much it blocks your development and your ability to learn and grow.
Well, it invalidates you as a human
Yeah, and
being. I
invalidates
mean,
you.
it literally is that bad.
Yeah. So we got that definitely down, and we even showed some of the things that extend from that behavior. Even
Yep.
when we got into politics and when we got into even talking about drugs and stuff, that still all flows from the toxic positivity movement because you're trying to still instill a positivity into something that is inherently toxic and negative.
And you're covering up stuff that needs help.
Yep.
So when we're talking about the body positive movement, that is problematic because people who might want help aren't going to go for it because they're then going to be shamed by the rest of the group, right? You
Yes.
have to fit a certain criteria to get into that group. Adele, the singer
Yes.
who did lose a ton of weight, she got
Yep.
a lot of flack for that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's bizarre. Why would you do that? Why are you giving
She was an
somebody a hard
icon for the
time?
movement, and then she lost weight.
And look at Oprah.
Mm-hmm.
Man alive. Every time she changes her shape, instead of people saying, boy, you've still got some stuff going on there that you're working on,
Mm-hmm.
they look at what's the method you used this
Yeah.
time, and lots of story about whether she should or shouldn't be doing it. Mind your own damn business. She's
Yeah.
doing it because she's doing it, but we get these, I don't know, we've lost it as a society and just everybody has an opinion about what everybody else needs
Yes.
to do and not do. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Crazy.
It is. So we'll end on that note. And I think the assignment is probably, I would argue, a little bit on the self-evident side. Please look into yourself and see when you're applying this toxic positivity to your own life. We've given tons and tons of examples, even when we seem to have drifted off board of how it can manifest itself.
Mm. Where you might be using it and where you might be receiving it and accepting that
Mm-hmm.
that's what you have to receive. Because I would argue that no, you don't. It's tough though. It's a very tough one to challenge. It's that would be, I'd love to hear anybody's journey with challenging toxic
Uh,
positivity.
I would too.
That
It
is
would be
tough.
good, you know. So yes, we'll call this a two aspect assignment. The first aspect, which would be the easiest one to do, is just review your own parts of your life where you see you've done it or engaged in it or where you see it in your life. But the second one is, you know what? If you want to share it, either send us, me or Michaela or whatever, or even to the show. Again, you can send a message. But something a little bit more detailed where you actually like explore it like in a very serious and deep way, or even a video or a recording of
Oh,
your
that'd be fun.
yeah. And then we'll either play it on the show if you want to.
With
If
permission. With
yes, with
permission.
permission, of
Yeah.
course. Or we'll at least me and Michaela will look it over, and if there's a discussion warranted from it, this will be another episode of the podcast. spurred on by whatever your answer was.
Yeah, I would love the feedback because it's very easy for us to both sit here and say stuff that's pretty unchallenged.
Yes,
And I know that sometimes I say things that are likely to wind people up, and that's okay, but why? And what was it? And what did you get from that?
yes.
And if you
Well,
disagree, that's cool. In what way? Like
mhm,
I always want to know the follow-up from that. It's not enough to say I don't agree with you. I want to know why. Because maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I said something in a way that conveyed a meaning I wasn't working on, which
yes,
could mean there's something in there that I was
mhm,
missing. So, it helps us to grow as
yeah,
well if you give us feedback. So please do.
right. And you have to look, right? So this is, you said it and it made me think of something. So we're looking at one, someone who's moved from place to place to place, who has exposure to different cultures and had to learn different ways of expressing yourself. I also come from a different, like, so, and then living in, me being in Canada and then not being a majority member of country. So having what do you call it, a subculture. So certain words are used differently, certain things are expressed differently. And you don't think about it when you do it. Like the example of someone saying, if you were smart, you would have done this.
Right.
So we may at some point in any of the episodes have talked that way and not realized it. So, and come across saying something that we didn't realize may have not been something that other people find insulting or in that idea. So that kind of feedback too is very much appreciated by anyone who's still listening at this time or isn't breaking it down into a bunch of different
You know what? I'm interested to hear what people disagree with, what they agree with, what their viewpoints are. I'm honestly not interested in whether somebody's offended or not.
right.
Truth to tell, I'm really
Mhm.
not. Because you can be offended and you still live. Like whatever. That's your choice. And I think we use that as a shield way too
Yeah.
often in society right now. You can't do that, I'm offended. It's like, I don't care. You can be offended by what I'm saying, that's fine. But what I would like to know is what was understood. And if I need to revisit that, change it in some way, to get my meaning across differently. I'm willing to willing and able to do that. But the offensive part
Yeah.
is your choice. I got
Yeah.
no control over how you
You
hear
can't
what
give
I say.
offense, you can only take offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I cannot control how you hear what I say.
Yeah.
But if I didn't say something well, I will do my best to say it differently.
Yes.
But we're not here to need to backtrack on stuff or change things to something softer because
Right.
hurt your
Yeah.
sensibilities. Like
I find this interesting what sets people off, to be honest with you.
oh, good
The part
grief,
of me, the
anything.
fiendish part of me loves hearing about those things because the fiendish part of me is like, next time you get me pissed off, I'm going to use it, right?
Yeah, it's misused.
Hmm.
And it's also used in such a way that if I say I'm offended, you need to not do that. Well, it's the same thing as cancel culture.
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing. It's just on a micro level.
Hmm.
And no, you can choose to be offended or not. I have no idea what your lens is. Like,
Yeah.
you make your decision about that. That's not my responsibility. And I don't accept responsibility for other people's offense.
Yeah. And nor should you,
Right?
right?
Because we don't have bandwidth for that. It's a distraction. It's
No, and that's,
another
yes. And
another
that,
thing of looking at stuff that you can't control. I can't
yeah,
control if you're offended or not.
it's interesting. This could be a whole other topic, but it's actually why we have biases in the first place, to give us something to focus on so that we're not all over the place with no focus.
Yeah, let's do it. That's another
Yeah.
topic.
We
Woohoo!
should do a topic on biases just to give people an idea. Not to prolong the episode, but it is interesting to note that a lot of things we consider negative and put a negative spin on actually have a positive element to them and actually are intended to be positive. But yet, when you live, the further you live away from nature, the more they basically come across as toxic because they're you don't they're they don't you Not that you can't use them for the original use, but basically most people don't because you figure, well, I'm safe now, and but yet all these behaviors still come up. And we'll
Yeah.
stop at that one because that's we're good. We've gone pretty good.
Another podcast. We have so many podcasts. We're going to be doing this for quite a
I
while.
think so
So
for quite a little bit because trying to establish a mindset, right, of how to be spiritual and how to think beyond just the normal way of looking at things requires depth, nuance, and yeah, even topics I did in the first season definitely need reviewing for for greater depth, or even when even new stuff comes out, like even if I worded it a certain way and it didn't help people bridge that gap in their head, but
I would love to do a podcast sometime on just spirituality.
yeah.
What is it? What
Mm.
isn't it?
Yeah.
We
Well, I
could go.
broke it down into a personality trait, a skill set, and a spiritual attribute.
We
So
can
yeah,
go in a
those are
whole
the
load
three
of
things.
directions,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that would be fun to do as well because people get very mixed up between following a religion and being spiritual. It's possible to do both, but hard, and typically they're not together.
Yeah. I mean, because I think for spirituality, I think I covered it in like a 10-minute scripted, you know, because I did knew at podcasting, didn't know how to put the full details into it, didn't and had no one to throw ideas across back and forth with. So I expressed it as I thought, you know, and what I said does hold, but
Mhm.
it can definitely be expanded upon, and we can definitely talk about ways that helps bring it into your mind that
We can play
bring,
with it.
and then now we really will because now we're going to be 3 hours, 10, 15 minutes. We're getting there.
Yeah, well, move over, Joe Rogan.
Yeah. So once again, I'm Daniel Dubois.
I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
Until next time.
Until next time.